Today happened to be the tribe's monthly aptitude test day for newborns. As usual, Yuri had arranged for the test to be done in secret. If another monster like Malaka appeared by some miracle, he wanted the chance to hide it first. Until now, only Malaka's parents, Alanda, Yuri, and the twins knew she was actually a blue aptitude. Even Malaka herself still thought she was green. The tribe's policy over the years had proven effective. Their number of yellow and even green aptitude children had steadily increased. In the 8 years since Rean and Roan were born, 3 more green aptitude babies had appeared. For a tribe of their size, that was an amazing result. Every one of them had a real chance of reaching foundation establishment in the future. Yuri's group entered one of the testing rooms. Inside, a young couple stood waiting, the mother cradling a baby boy in her arms. The father was also a warrior of the tribe. Tribe leader. Tribe leader. They both bowed quickly. Yuri nodded in response. The elder who had fetched Yuri stepped forward and pricked the baby's finger, drawing a drop of blood. He let it fall onto the aptitude orb. The orb lit up immediately with a deep, brilliant purple. Yuri's heart nearly stopped. He had to grab the wall to keep from collapsing. Purple aptitude, he muttered. Rean and Roan were just as stunned. As they knew, aptitude ranks were gray, brown, yellow, green, blue, red, and purple. Malaka, with her blue aptitude, was already considered a once-in-a-lifetime treasure for a place like this. But purple? That was something people here only ever heard of in stories. How is that even possible? Rean thought, is our tribe standing on some kind of holy land? Did a god descend here in the past? The twins looked at each other. No matter how they thought about it, this mini-high aptitude babies appearing in a small tribe shouldn't be normal. And now there was even a purple. Rean focused his mind on the dimensional realm. Sister Orb, do you know what's going on? How could a purple aptitude appear here? Wait, is this the same reason Roan and I were born in this place? Of course not. Otherwise, how do you explain that the tribe only had average numbers of high aptitude babies in the past? The cause you're looking for is the two of you. Your presence is balancing the yin and yang in this region. The longer you stay, the better the balance becomes. This place is turning into a blessed land because of you two. Rean and Roan were taken aback. This was the first time they'd heard that. Why didn't you tell us? Rean demanded. I forgot. Both of them had the sudden urge to kick Sister Orb again. Besides, it's not like knowing earlier would change anything. It's not as if you'd leave this place alone, right? I highly doubt it. The twins exchanged a look, then let it go. In the end, it was good news for the tribe, as long as Yuri could hide this purple aptitude baby well enough. Judging by Yuri's face, though, he wasn't very confident about that. He caught himself a moment later, coughed, and regained his composure. Sorry, I was just too surprised, he said. I never imagined our tribe would be blessed with a purple aptitude baby. But do you both understand what this means? The father, as a warrior and cultivator, nodded immediately. He might not be especially talented, but he wasn't ignorant. We've already talked about it, he said. We know we can't let this spread. We'll keep it secret from everyone else, even from our son, at least until he's old enough to decide for himself. Yuri nodded, satisfied. As expected, once a family has a warrior, their perspective broadens. You're right. A purple aptitude child in a small tribe like ours is nothing but a legend. From what I know of the cultivation world, this wouldn't just attract one sex attention. It could start a war between sections. He turned to Rean and Roan. Since you're already here, I'll explain things in detail. Listen carefully. The twins focused, and even Sister Orb paid attention. Our Jalan country is very small, Yuri began. We sit on the northeast border of the continent. Astreg City is even smaller, one of the least significant cities in Jalan, also in the northeast. He continued, our country has 5 sects: Rose sect, Lagan sect, Dalamus sect, Umbral sect, and Raskil sect. From what I've heard, you need at least yellow aptitude to stand a real chance of joining any of them. There are also 2 powers on the same level as the sects, the Jalan royal family and the Zafa Bank. The Zafa Bank operates across the entire empire, not just in Jalan. In a way, they're stronger than the 5 sects, but their strength comes from wealth. They also don't interfere with country politics. They only care about profit. So you can remove them from a list of factions that would fight over a child like this. As for our empire, it rules the northern part of the continent and is called the Sassamil Empire. He waved that part off. But let's focus on the 5 sections. Most of the people who try to join them have green aptitude. Yellow aptitude candidates rarely pass the entrance tests. Sometimes a blue shows up, but they're rare. As for red, he shook his head. I won't say they don't exist, but they're as rare as phoenix feathers. Maybe one appears every 2 or 3 years during recruitment. That's just my guess, since we live far from the center and information is limited. Rean and Roan asked the obvious question. What about purple? Yuri let out a long breath. I only know of a single confirmed purple aptitude cultivator, he said. And that's because the nobles make sure everyone hears about him. He's the progenitor of the Jalan royal family and the founder of Jalan country itself. ZF Jalan. Everyone in the room fell silent. A purple aptitude person had once built an entire country. And now, a baby with the same level of aptitude had just appeared in their tiny tribe. Yuri looked around the room before speaking again. Now, do you understand just how amazing a purple aptitude is? The 5 sects would definitely fight over him. The royal family would almost certainly get involved too. A single blue aptitude is enough to bring huge trouble to a small tribe like ours, maybe even wipe us out. A purple aptitude would guarantee it. He used blue as an example on purpose and never mentioned Inna Malaka at all. We understand, tribe leader, the parent said. Yuri looked down at the baby in the mother's arms. By the way, what's his name? Mivo Yalan. They talked for a while about Mivo's future. The parents were curious why Rean and Roan were present, but Yuri assured them it was fine and that the twins could be trusted. Eventually, everyone left the testing room. On the way back, Yuri glanced at Rean and Roan. You two don't happen to have anything to do with this, do you? The twins' hearts skipped a beat. Cough, cough. Well, maybe, Rean said weakly. Yuri's mouth twitched, but he didn't press further. After that, they finished discussing the steel workshop plans, and the twins headed home. Purple aptitude, huh? Rean asked later. Sister Orb, could it be better than our black and white? I can't say for sure. You two are clearly above Inna Malaka's blue aptitude, but I've never seen a red or purple aptitude before. Don't forget, I was on the other side of the universe with you before we came here. We'll have to watch and see. My guess is that at best, he's on your level. He definitely can't do element exchange like you can. The twins agreed. Besides, we have the 10th pillar too, and we're almost 9 years old now. By the time his talent really shows, we might not even be here anymore. They pushed the matter aside and went back to cultivating. Another year passed in a flash. In that time, Yuri expanded the steel workshop and started offering more services. With Rean's help, they developed other alloys like aluminum, which didn't rust. Every new metal was carefully registered. Thanks to that, the Varen workshop's income shot up again. People were amazed at how they kept coming up with new materials. Yuri ended up buying 2 more workshops just to keep up with demand. The Zafa Bank was more than happy to assist in all of this. Rean visited the workshops regularly to make sure everything followed his designs and methods. From the workshop profits, Rean earned another 40 destiny points. On Roan's side, he continued teaching the tribe's kids. Among the warriors, a few finally started to show decent progress in the Death Sword style. Alanda, for example, could now use the first form, Stellar Piercer, at a basic level. Yuri focused on the second form, Crescent Moon. With the extra spirit stones coming in from the workshop and being distributed for cultivation, the tribe's overall strength rose. That gave Rean and Roan another 20 destiny points. At this point, Varen was effectively a medium-sized tribe in terms of power, but almost no one knew they had 2 extra Foundation establishment cultivators, the twins. Because of that, the surrounding tribes still saw Varen as a small tribe. Since Yuri never went out of his way to pick fights, no one had a clear idea of how strong they had become. Meanwhile, in the Kianmi tribe, Kianmi Yisvil sat in a meeting with 2 other tribe leaders, Kalen Boku of the medium-sized Boka tribe and Shinken Hersen of the medium-sized Hersen tribe. Yisvil, just to confirm, Kalen said, all the spoils will be shared between Shinken and me, correct? Yisful nodded. Correct. As long as we wipe out this problem in my territory, you two can have everything from there. Shinken frowned. Didn't you say you were going to wait 10 years before making a move? Why act a year earlier? Yisful's face twisted in annoyance. The Varen tribe started receiving a lot more spirit stones thanks to their workshops in Estreg City, he said. It seems they've created even more new metals and increased their profits again. From what I've learned, Yuri isn't hoarding all those spirit stones like a normal tribe leader would. He's spreading them among his warriors nonstop. If I wait any longer, they might become too troublesome to deal with. Shinken and Kalen narrowed their eyes. As leaders of medium-sized tribes from other territories, they didn't have much detailed information on Varen, but they did know about the workshop and the Zafa Bank deal. That was why they agreed to help. They wanted the spirit stones Yuri had supposedly saved up. They hadn't expected Yuri to be giving so many stones to his warriors instead, which meant their profit might be lower than they'd hoped. Yisful could read their expressions and continued quickly. Don't worry, Yuri is still a tribe leader. Do you really think he hasn't kept extra for himself? If he's generous enough to hand out that many stones, just imagine how much more he's hiding personally. Shinken and Kalen paused, then their eyes lit up. That made sense. Wait, Shinken said. Isn't the Zafa Bank their ally? Wouldn't Yuri store most of his spirit stones there? Yisful actually laughed. Would you leave all your spirit stones in the Zafa Bank? They wouldn't. At best, they might keep half there. The rest will be close at hand. Are you sure the Zafa Bank won't interfere in a tribe war? Kalen asked. Yisful nodded. I've already checked. They'll protect the workshops, but they won't lift a finger for the Varen tribe itself. I can guarantee that. In that case, Shinken said, we'll gather our warriors. When do we attack? Yisful smiled. In 2 weeks.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Yisful was right about one thing. Yuri was indeed keeping some of the spirit stones. But it wasn't for him. He simply kept it there in case the tribe needed it in an emergency. So, in fact, it isn't as much as they think. Yuri had really used almost all the spirit stones in the tribe. Almost 2 weeks later, a warrior came into his house to report. Tribe leader, something is happening in the Yisful tribe. Yuri's attention was piqued. What is it? We noticed that their warriors are mobilizing. From the looks of it, our tribe war might start at any moment. Yuri's eyes narrowed. A tribe war? Were the Kianmi tribe in bad terms with anyone recently? The warrior shook his head. We have kept an eye on all the tribes around us during the past few years as you instructed us. But so far, no other tribe seems to be acting weird. We also didn't find any sign that they were in bad terms with Kianmi. Because of that, we can't ascertain who their target really is. Yuri found it to be a little too fishy. Could they be targeting us? But that makes no sense since they would lose too much in that case. Could it be one of the small tribes around? Or some other tribe outside our territory? Keep observing their movements. If anything new happens, let me know. The warrior nodded and quickly left. Yuri then asked another warrior to call the elders, Alanda, Rean, and Roan over. Late that day, everyone was gathered in the elders' hall at the center of the tribe. Rean and Roan were also there, but they were not appearing. Yuri kept those two hidden so that they would only hear the conversation. After all, they're the tribe's trump card. The smaller the number of people who know about their real power, the better. As the elders discussed the news about the Kianmi tribe, Rean and Roan were also doing the same with each other. What do you think? Roan nodded. Considering everything I heard so far, I would say that there is at least an 80% chance that they are coming for us. Rean was surprised to hear that. Didn't they say that it wouldn't be worth it to attack us with the Kianmi tribe's strength? Roan nodded once more. That's why soon enough, we should get a report of some other tribes entering our territory. If one tribe isn't enough, then try 2, 3, 4. As long as the profit is worth it, you can convince others. The same way we keep eyes on the other tribes keep eyes on us. So it shouldn't be a secret how our tribe's strength had been increasing recently. That Kiami tribe is the only medium-sized tribe in our territory, so they can't allow another one to appear. It is that simple. Sure enough, another warrior appeared a few minutes later to give his report. We spotted another 2 tribes entering our territory. Judging by their banners, they are the Boku from the south and Hersin from the west. Both are medium-sized tribes. Yuri was surprised to hear that. It was exactly like Roan mentioned. Before coming to the Elders' Hall, Yuri had told Rean, Roan, and Alanda about what was going to be discussed. Hearing that, Roan immediately asked Yuri to send warriors to watch the borders of their territory. Yuri followed his wishes, and sure enough, it proved helpful. One of the elders couldn't help but comment. Does it mean that they are the ones attacking the Kiami tribe together? Yuri was just about to answer when he received a spiritual sense message from Roan. He immediately changed what he was about to say after that. Gather all warriors. Our Varen tribe is going into full war mode. The elders were taken aback by that. Isn't it too early to get into conclusions? Yuri shook his head and repeated the same words Roan told him. The Kiami tribe is inside their tribe territory. Those 2 tribes have similar strength to them. That means that if they want to win a war against the Kiami tribe, they will need to pay a huge price. They would probably not be medium-sized tribes anymore when everything is over. That being said, there is no way that Boku and Hersin would take this risk. With this line of thought, it is almost guaranteed that they aren't fighting each other. Since they aren't fighting, it could only mean that they are in an alliance. Now then, which tribe in our territory would the Kiami tribe need the alliance to deal with? All the elders' hearts skipped a bit after hearing that. There is only a single tribe which the Kiami tribe would need help to deal with, their own. Immediately, a bell sound started to resonate in the entire tribe. When the people heard that, they immediately started to mobilize. Ever since the Varen workshop began to make money, Yuri thought about the possibility of the tribe being under attack. So he made sure that everyone knew what to do in case this bell was ever used. All the ordinary people immediately gathered in the center of the village. Surprisingly, they all carried bags full of food and water as if they were ready to go on travel. Yuri then went on the stage to talk. It is still not confirmed, but we are almost certain that our tribe is about to be attacked. That being said, you already know what to do. Everyone who is not related to the tribe's protection is to immediately move into the mine to hide. Elder Jasviu and a few warriors under his command will be leading this group. Jasviu stepped forward and received the order. At the same time, Yuri asked him through a divine sense message, "Is that thing ready?" Jasviu immediately nodded. "We finished a year ago. No one other than those present in the excavation knows about this." Yuri nodded, satisfied. He had put Jasviu in charge of making an escape route that led to the Lyman Mountains' opposite side. That escape route took more than 3 years to be done. It couldn't be helped, after all. The mountain expanded for several kilometers, and the number of people involved wasn't that big to keep the secret. But in the end, their efforts were compensated. Very well. In case we lose, you should immediately destroy the entrance and flee to the previously agreed place. Understood? Jasviu nodded, and he began to guide all the common people into the mines. Yuri then looked at Roan in the corner where no one was paying attention. Just how far have you seen? In Roan's previous life as Death Spirit, he had been everywhere. Obviously, the number of battlefields that he saw is uncountable. The number strategies even more so. Such things like predicting that other tribes would join the fray was just too easy for him. It couldn't even be considered a strategy, just banding together to overwhelm the other with numbers. Once all the ordinary people left, Yuri went to talk with him. Was that okay? Roan nodded. Give me 20 warriors. They must obey all my orders. Is that fine? Yuri pondered a bit and agreed. Although the warriors would find it weird to follow the orders of a kid, Yuri could still convince this amount. A few minutes later, those warriors already appeared. Roan then looked at Rean and asked, "Did you prepare what I asked for?" Rean shrugged his shoulders. "You gave me too little time, so just a few were ready." Roan smiled. "That should do. They won't be coming now anyway. So just make more while I will be taking them." Rean made an okay sign. "By the way, Don't you need my help with those things? Roan snorted. Don't forget our roles, equipments, and resources are up to you, but combat is my field. The last thing I need is for you to ruin my plans. Rean just shook his head and returned to the tribe's blacksmith workshop. Roan then took all that he needed and ran around the tribe with those warriors. The day quickly passed, and night came. It was then that Yuri received the message that the enemies were coming. Sure enough, it would be a night raid. On the top of the tribe's wall, Yuri looked as the 3 tribes came over. Together, they had almost 1,000 warriors. As for the Rean tribe, they barely reached 200. The tribe had more than it, but a few of them followed the ordinary tribe into the mines. In case things go south, they would be responsible for protecting them while they escaped. Before the battle started, the Kianmi tribe leader came forward to the Hersin and Boku tribes once. Yuri smiled at them and asked, I didn't expect to get a visit so late at night, much less so many. I guess you didn't come to drink with me, did you? Kianmi Yasful laughed after hearing that. We did. It's just that the drink will be your tribe member's blood. Yuri Varen, your tribe, has become too strong for its own good. This is just my Kianmi tribe, preventing someone else from eating our food later. Don't take it personally. The world is for the strong. Yuri laughed and nodded. Indeed, the world is for the strong. So I'll give you a piece of advice. You should leave now while you still can. If not, don't blame my Varen tribe for being nasty. Hearing that made the Yaskil, Kalen, and Shinken laugh out loud. Then, we want to see just how nasty you can become. The 3 leaders then went back to their warriors group. On the Varen tribe side, Yuri came down from the wall and landed just beside Roan. Is everything prepared? Roan nodded. As long as our warriors don't forget the locations, it should be fine. Although I can't say that there will be no deaths on our side, you should be strong enough to deal with this amount. Yuri couldn't help but feel impressed with Roan's ingenuity. Everyone get ready. Outside the Varen's tribe, the tribe discussed how they should go with it. Neither of us wants to be the ones losing more tribe members. So each side will first send half of our groups to go together. The Varen tribe is placed against the Lyman Mountain, which is south, so it will be annoying to enter from there. In that case, let each group attack from north, east, and west. Is there anyone against these rules? Zenkin pondered a bit before saying, I don't mind it, but the 3 groups must have mixed warriors of the 3 tribes. After all, what if one side simply decides to not enter? I hope the Kianmi and Boka tribes have nothing against it. Kalen and Yisful nodded. That was the best option available. The cultivation world was just like this, filled with mistrust. Each side wants to guarantee its safety first above all. Very good. We all brought 2 Foundation Establishment Realm, each counting with us. This first raid, let's give the command of each group to one of them. Alanda and Yuri are the only Foundation Establishment Realms of the Varen tribe, as far as I know. They can only defend 2 sides, so one of them will be empty. Back inside the Varen tribe, Alanda was positioned on the west side, while Yuri was on the east. As for Rean and Roan, they stayed in the north. A few minutes earlier, Roan gave his plans. They definitely have more Foundation establishment than us, but they only know about Alanda and Yuri. Rean and I will use this chance to get rid of one of them straight away. The leaders will most likely not attack at first, and I doubt they will send everyone at once. They are completely underestimating our forces just because they have more than double our numbers. Don't miss this chance and kill as much as possible. Also, don't forget everything I prepared. That is the first phase. Sure enough, it was just as Roan mentioned. From the top of the wall, it was easy to see only half of the 1,000 warriors moving to the 3 sides. The walls of the Varen tribe were nothing impressive. Even energy-gathering realm cultivators could jump it as long as they put enough effort. They only had between 6 to 7 meters, which was mostly used to keep demon beasts away, not humans. Also, except for a few guarding points, there was no space for a person to stay on the wall's top, since the walls are palisades. That being said, Roan gave up defending the walls. Instead, he decided to use the houses of the tribe as cover for his plans. Of course, it is not like he didn't leave a surprise behind. Without further delay, the enemy warriors started to jump the walls. As mentioned before, There wasn't space for you to stand on top of it, since they are palisades. It's just that the tribe had used really thick trees to build them, so an energy-gathering realm cultivator would take just too long to break through it. First of all, the three tribes' alliance didn't think that it was necessary. However, as soon as they started to land, the ground under them caved into, and they fell. Under them, several metal stakes were placed. Rean didn't have enough time to make enough stakes to cover the entire length of the walls. However, Roan guessed that they would attack from those 3 points, and so they did. But that wasn't the trick behind it. Considering that they're all at least in the energy-gathering realm, those warriors could still react fast enough. They could turn their bodies in a position where they would fall between the gaps of those metal stakes. Although not all of them would be able to do it, Roan was sure that the majority would. But they committed a mistake when they decided to do a night raid. Outside the Rean tribe wall, you could see the lit torches which illuminated the outside. However, as soon as you landed on the inside, everything was pitch black. There wasn't a single torch or any other light source available. The warriors could still use their spiritual sense to feel the metal stakes under the ground. However, the spiritual sense of energy-gathering realm cultivators isn't anything impressive. It was far from being able to substitute the vision. Soon, several screams could be heard coming from north, east, and west. In this little time, about 80 or so warriors were impaled. The Foundation establishment leaders of each group grimaced. Their spiritual sense is a lot stronger than the energy-gathering realm ones. Thanks to that, they could see what was happening once they got close enough to the walls. There are metal stakes on the other side. Don't just fall close to the wall. After you jump over it, use the wall to push yourselves ahead to avoid the pit. Everyone immediately followed the orders, and they were able to avoid being impaled by the metal stakes. Those who landed on the other side didn't advance straight away, but waited for the others to gather close. Some of them brought the torches from outside the walls so that they could see what was in front of them. The east, west, and north were different. The north was the main entrance of the tribe, so the first houses available were a few tens of meters away from it. The area in between was basically empty space, so that the merchants that came once per month could park their carriages where the goods would be moved. Because of that, Roan used a different approach to it. The North enemy group noticed that there were around 50 Rean tribe warriors in front. They were positioned in a formation with their weapons in hand. The Foundation establishment enemy warrior finally landed on the other side as well and looked at those warriors in front. They were just 50 or so, while his forces had around 150 warriors. Although he lost a few for the stakes earlier, he didn't mind it. He then spread his spiritual sense forward and noticed that the two men called Alanda and Yuri were not present. Yasval Kiami had told them how they looked like, but those two were not present. Hee, seems like we won the lottery. Both sides stared at each other and didn't move. Once enough enemy warriors gathered, their leader gave the order. Attack! The North enemies dashed forward in that dark environment illuminated only by the 10 or so torches that they got from outside. But they didn't care. They couldn't see well, but so did the Rean tribe warriors. With their number and no Foundation establishment to give support, those 50 or so Rean tribe warriors would be wiped out very soon. From behind the Rean tribe warriors, a childish voice came out as well. Attack! The Rean tribe warriors immediately dashed forward. As for the voice, it was none other than Rean's. At the moment, his hands were closed against each other, as if he was holding something inside them. There were just a few tens of meters between both sides, so this distance was covered in a second. Just as both sides were about to clash against each other, Rean smiled and jumped behind his tribe warrior members. The enemies couldn't see well, but they were sure that whoever jumped was quite small, just like a kid. Even the Foundation establishment warrior was puzzled at that view. Suddenly, Rean opened his hands behind the Rean tribe warriors at the very moment of the clash. Flash! The almost pitch-black world suddenly brightened, as if a sun appeared out of nowhere. All the enemy's warriors' eyes that had got used to the dark went blind. Even the Foundation establishment enemy warrior was no exception. Obviously, that was Rean's light element flash. He had used this trick in the past against the demon beasts, and Roan made sure to have it played again. Now that Rean is in the Foundation establishment realm, One can only imagine just how much light element he could use. Rean kept gathering light element ever since the warriors started to jump the walls, compressing it as much as possible, all for the sake of this single moment. All of the enemies instinctively covered their eyes with their arms. As for the Varen tribe warriors, they did not lose this chance. The Varen tribe warriors had their backs against the light, so it simply didn't affect them as much. Although it was bright, they could still see. Every single one of them had steel weapons. All of them had been cultivating with a lot more spiritual stones in the past years. They had access to the death style manuals too. One must remember that Roan's death style had only one objective: kill as fast as possible. Use every chance available to give a fatal blow. What happened after was a massacre. In a second, the enemy warriors in the front were cut through like cabbages. The Foundation Establishment warrior was the first to recover from his blindness and was enraged with what he saw. Over half of his subordinates were killed in that one clash, and the rampage didn't stop. But just as he was about to dash forward to kill all those Varen tribe warriors, he heard a childish voice from behind. "Shouldn't you pay more attention to yourself?" 3 black and white swords appeared in his vision in an instant. He was distracted by what was happening with his subordinates that he didn't notice this threat approaching with his spiritual sense. First of all, how did this kid even appear behind him? There was simply not enough time for someone to circle around their group and reach his back. Unfortunately, he would never know the answer. The guy tried to raise his weapon to defend, but it was already too late. Death style, 3rd form, 3 claws of the dragon. Swish, swish, swish. Next thing he knew, his body was cut in 3. The first Foundation Establishment Realm Cultivator was dead. Why did Roan appear behind him so fast? The reason was simple. Roan had been behind the enemy's warriors to start with. The insides of the Varen tribe were covered in darkness with almost no light to start with. He simply laid against the north walls and used his darkness element to change his spiritual energy color. It was basically the same trick that he used against the Azure Hyenas. At that time, Rean was together to bend the little light away from the darkness. But this time, Roan didn't need to, since they had prepared the environment to be much darker than back then. With Rean and Roan as Foundation Establishment Realm Cultivations and no leader, the enemies were quickly wiped out. The twins kept operating around the enemy's group, preventing a single one of them from escaping. Roan's objective was to not let them inform the outside about his and Rean's presence. From their 50 or so warriors, only 3 died and 7 got injured. As soon as this battle was over, Rean immediately used his light element to help the injured warriors to recover. The warriors were really shocked by Rean and Roan's strength. They were nervous at first when Yuri told them to follow their orders. Fortunately, everyone trusts Yuri's judgment. It was him that brought up the tribe to what it was today, so they still obeyed his orders. Sure enough, seeing that they only lost 3 warriors while killing over 150 proved that Yuri wasn't wrong. As for Roan, he immediately dashed away when he was sure the battle was won. He went to the west side, where Alanda was defending. The west and east sides did not have that enormous gap between the houses and the walls. There were just a few meters. That being said, there was enough space for the battle to happen. Roan had only taken 50 of the 200 or so warriors of the Varen tribe, leaving 75 for Alanda and Yuri. Since he and Rean are Foundation Establishment cultivators, they could do with a smaller number. Alanda's west side battle started at the same time as the north and east. Back then, after the warriors learned to avoid the metal stakes on the ground, they did not find any resistance in front. Because of that, they waited for more of their companions to lend inside before moving forward as a group. This time, they were obviously using their spiritual sense to check the ground for more concealed traps. What they didn't notice in the dark environment is that they were being led. Several wooden walls had been raised between the houses to make it look like they had always been there. If it was day, they would have noticed that they are quite new. But during the night, it was too hard to see. Finally, they arrived in front of a street where the Varen tribe warriors were making a line, waiting for them. The commander of this group, a middle-stage Foundation Establishment warrior, came forward and looked at Alanda, who was in front of his warriors group. Using his spiritual sense, he noticed that Alanda is only an initial stage, so he wasn't the least bit afraid. He quickly looked around and understood what Alanda wanted. With little space to move, it would be hard to use their numbers advantage. Cheap tricks. But suddenly, something unexpected happened. Alanda pointed his sword forward and shouted, "Attack!" The commander was taken aback. He knew that Alanda's group was going to keep a defensive attitude. It didn't pass through his mind that they would attack. Still, he was just surprised, not afraid. He also pointed his sword forward, just like Alanda. "Attack!" At the same time, he sent a spiritual sense message to the warriors on the back of his group. The moment we clash against their group, jump over the houses and circle around them. If they think we will follow their plans and fight in this closed space, they're severely underestimating us. The commander took the front to stop Alanda, while the other warriors would hold the rest on the sides. Seeing that, Alanda smiled and pointed his sword forward. Spiritual energy and wind element started to gather around his sword while he retracted it. Just a second before both sides were about to collide against each other, Alanda thrust his sword forward. Death style, first form, stellar piercer. Alanda's control of this technique wasn't as good as Rean, but it was a lot stronger than Rean's attack back in the Giron forest. After all, Rean was only an energy-gathering realm at that time. Alanda decided to learn this technique first because it was the best one for his wind element. Thanks to that, it could travel much further, and his foundation establishment realm made it a lot more powerful. Swish! The commander of that group was alarmed. That green-like needle energy arrived in front of his heart almost instantly. He only had enough time to turn around his body, barely avoiding a fatal injury. Alanda didn't mind, though. His target wasn't the commander, but the packed group of warriors behind him. Puffed, 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 puffed. In an instant, more than 20 warriors behind the commander were impaled. 10 or so died instantly, while most of the others received grievous wounds. The commander was frightened by this attack's piercing power. He had never seen anything like that before. However, when he looked at Alanda once more, he noticed that he was already preparing to send another attack of the same type. "Do you think there is no one here to stop you?" He pounced forward against Alanda and prevented him from using another stellar piercer. Alanda and the commander's weapons clashed while all the other warriors attacked their enemies on the sides. The moment both sides reached each other, Pardo, the enemy's group on the back, immediately jumped over the houses. They were expecting to go around Alanda's group and eat them from both sides. This way, this closed space battle would turn into their advantage, and Alanda's group would have nowhere to flee. However, seeing that scene, Alanda just smiled. Just as Rean said, Rean didn't think he did anything impressive. Use the dark environment to guide the enemy. Once they saw that they were in a closed space and can't use their numbers advantage, a part of it would definitely use the houses to circle around the smaller group. It was that simple and obvious. So what is there to be proud of? Alanda's stellar piercer target was the warriors behind the commander. That much was true. But the real objective wasn't to kill them, but to force the Foundation Establishment Realm Commander to focus solely on Alanda. He was the only one with a spiritual sense strong enough to see the traps left on those houses. What the enemy commander failed to see is that Alanda's group only had around 40 warriors defending that street. In that case, were the other 35 that Rean left with him? The answer was the ceilings of those houses on the side. The moment the enemies jumped over the roofs, Alanda's warriors broke through the wooden walls, taking those warriors by surprise. In an instant, another 30 or so enemy warriors were killed by the steel weapons. Considering the deaths at the tribe's wall jump, through the stellar piercer, and the house's roofs, the enemy forces on the west side already lost 80 or so warriors. They now had around 100, and they hadn't killed a single warrior of the Rean tribe yet. Without a doubt, their losses were grievous. The fight then immediately turned into Alanda's group advantage. Although the enemy still had more warriors, they're severely lacking on the weapons side. One weapon after another was being destroyed by Rean's steel ones. Without a weapon to protect themselves, their only choice was to retreat or be killed. It only took a minute for Alanda's side to gain the advantage in numbers, and the massacre continued. The enemy's commander was enraged with that sight, but there was nothing he could do about it. Alanda's cultivation is one stage behind the enemy's foundation establishment realm warrior. However, both Alanda and Yuri got the spiritual swords made by Rean, which are several times better than the normal low-level ones. The only reason the enemy's commander weapon hasn't broken yet is that his spiritual energy is stronger than Alanda's. By covering his weapon with more spiritual energy, he could prevent it from shattering. Of course, his weapon was also a spiritual equipment, but the quality was just that much worse. However, this situation wouldn't last for long. As much as the commander protected his weapon against Alanda's, it was still cracking little by little. It wouldn't be long before his weapon shattered utterly. Seeing that there was no way to salvage the situation, he could only retreat and ask for reinforcements from the warriors outside. Retreat. It was a tremendous humiliation for him. He had more warriors and higher cultivation, but he was still forced to say those words. Alanda didn't stop him. Instead, he turned around and dashed in the middle of the remaining enemy warriors. Without a foundation establishment realm to hold Alanda back, the place turned into a slaughterhouse. Roan was very direct about his plan. Kill as much as possible. Reduce the other side's numbers to the best of your abilities. Seeing that Alanda didn't pursue him, the enemy commander felt even angrier. He can't fight Alanda because of his weapon, but he could definitely outrun him. He hoped to have Alanda follow him while his remaining warriors escaped. But contrary to his plan, Alanda instantly ignored him. However, Alanda was definitely paying attention to him. If he went back, Alanda would be prepared. As the number of his allies decreased, he would find himself surrounded by Alanda's warriors. Even though he is a middle-stage foundation establishment realm, he isn't God. If that many attacked at the same time, he would be done for. Gritting his teeth, he turned around and dashed away. That battle was lost, and those warriors most likely doomed. He quickly arrived at the west wall of the tribe. But the moment he jumped, he noticed something inside his spiritual sense under the place he was flying over. There was very little light, so it was hard to see with the eyes. Still, he could see that it looked like a small mass black spiritual energy. If the battle had gone according to the plan, the enemy's foundation establishment realm would definitely retreat through this path. That was what Roan thought. Sure enough, here he was. However, Roan couldn't help but think just how dumb this guy is. Instead of getting close to the wall to jump as little as possible, he jumped from several meters back. Most likely, this idiot is used to show off in his tribe, so everything he does catches a lot of attention. If this enemy commander had waited to get closer to the wall before jumping, he would notice Roan's presence sooner. Of course, Roan was still confident that he could win a clash between them. Roan's initial plan was to have this enemy underestimate his kid's appearance to give a fatal blow. But who could have thought that he was idiot enough to deliver himself in a silver plate? Rean, on the north side of the tribe, immediately noticed Roan absorbing a lot of light element through their soul connection. Rean just smiled after sensing it. Seems like he found his target. Roan smiled too as he looked that guy passing over him. Death-style, fourth form, soaring dragon. Roan used the light element on his legs, which increased their life force and power a lot for a brief moment to jump. Dark and light elements gathered around his sword as he soared against the enemy's commander of the west side. Roan's white and dark spiritual energy propelled him even faster. It was really like a dragon taking to the skies. But what really shocked the commander was that what was coming flying at him was a kid. Not only that, but his spiritual sense told him that Roan was also in the foundation establishment realm. How was that possible? This surprise also delayed his actions for a split of a second. He tried to defend himself, but he was in midair and had no footing to force faster movements. Swish! His spiritual energy barrier crumbled as his body was cleaved in half. As for Roan, he only stopped another 30 meters higher in the skies. Looking at the enemy while he descended, he couldn't help but rub his legs. This attack really puts a lot of burden on the legs. I better not use it often until my body gets stronger. The second enemy foundation establishment enemy was now dead too. Roan then looked at the east before thinking. It should be over on Yuri's side as well. Roan was right. Both east and west were similar in structures, so Yuri used the same strategy as Alanda to get rid of his enemies. In his case, he learned the Death Style's second form, Crescent Moon. This is Roan's area attack that aims a large group of enemies at once. Not surprisingly, Yuri's attack killed even more than Alanda's Stellar Piercer, immediately grabbing the attention of the Foundation establishment commander of that side. Once again, the enemy tried to use the side houses, and once again, the warriors came from below it to attack them. However, Yuri was not able to kill the enemy's Foundation establishment cultivator. Or to be more precise, Yuri did not try to kill him to start with. Having him escaping was also part of Roan's plan. Outside, that East Side Foundation establishment commander came back, which much puzzled Yasvel, Kalen, and Zinkin. It doesn't matter how they see it. He came back way too fast. No more than 10 minutes had passed since all the battle started. It should have taken longer. This Foundation establishment cultivator was part of the Hersel tribe, so Zinkin started to laugh when he saw him. Ha! Look, with Tonka there, the East Side is gone already. He even came back to report. As for your two commanders, they're still inside. Kalen and Yasvel snorted. It just means that he won the lottery and got the side where Alanda and Yuri were not present. What is there to be proud of? Sending a Foundation establishment while commanding a bigger group against a pack of energy-gathering realm warriors is very easy. Anyone here would have the same results. However, as that Foundation establishment got closer, the three leaders' expressions began to change. He had cuts all over his body. The weapon on his hand was almost destroyed. Not to mention that he seemed extremely tired, as if he had gone through a life and death battle. The truth is precisely like that. This commander is an initial stage Foundation establishment warrior, just like Yuri. If not because his weapon is a big spiritual mace, which is much more resistant than a sword, Yuri's spiritual sword would have destroyed it easily. In fact, Yuri would have the advantage even without that Rean's spiritual sword. After all, he is a practitioner of the Death Style and had been the Foundation establishment realm's initial stage for much longer. The guy then fell on the ground before squeezing the next words of his mouth. Dead. They are all dead. Our entire East Side group was completely wiped out. We simply had no chance. What? The three leaders' expressions turned dark. Explain what happened now. As they heard that commander explaining what happened, they started to have a bad feeling. So far, the other two sides hadn't sent anyone to report either. It was then that they remembered to see some bright light on the north side before. However, they didn't care much about that since they didn't feel any destructive power coming from that light. At that point, they simply thought it was some trick used by Yuri and his warriors. Not good. We need to go take a look. But before they even moved, they heard a voice coming from the north wall guarding point. Is Yasvel and his friends there? Yasvel felt a chill on his back while he looked in the direction of the voice. Sure enough, it was Yuri who talked. Not only that, but Alanda was also by his side. What did that mean? If they are there, it meant that there was no more battle happening inside their tribe. Their 500 warriors that were sent earlier were completely wiped out. Yasvel, Kalen, and Zinkin then came forward. The first one to speak was Kalen Boku. Yuri Varen, is it? What happened with my Foundation establishment warrior on the west side? Yuri smiled and looked at Alanda. Alanda, obviously, understood his intentions and stepped forward. Oh, are you talking about this guy? Alanda then threw a head on the ground, right in front of Kalen. Seeing his middle stage Foundation establishment warrior's head, Kalen felt pain in his heart. Every warrior of this level was precious for a middle-sized tribe. Not to mention that he lost over 150 energy gathering realm warriors as well. I'm sorry about that. He was just too weak. Rean and Roan, obviously, were also present. However, they stayed behind the walls, only listening to the conversation. Roan, what do you think they will do? Roan pondered a bit before saying, I would say there's a 50% chance of those two tribes retreating, ending their alliance with the Kiami tribe. That's why I asked to let that East Side Foundation establishment escape. I wanted him to tell them that we wiped out their forces while losing almost no warriors on our side. Wouldn't they do the opposite and attack to get revenge for them? That's the part one can't predict in this fight. Just how much do they value their own pride over the well-being of their tribe? The humans' feelings are a peculiar thing. hard to predict. Logic says that they should retreat and cut their losses, and that's what I hope as well. All will depend on how Yuri plays the cards I gave him. Of course, if they decide to come, we are more than ready for them. Kalen Boku looked at the head of his commander and was fuming in rage. However, what Roan said was also weighing in his mind. He heard the Herschel commander's report and understood that the Varen tribe haven't lost much until now. So can they really beat this Varen tribe? Even if they can, what will be the cost for his Boku tribe? However, the one who was feeling the worst at the moment was Yasval Kianmi. He understood that this alliance was at risk of breaking up. The Herschel and Boku tribe will be fine since they came from another territory. Still, his Herschel is in the same region as the Varen tribe, and they were the ones responsible for this war. He has to convince those two to bring Figs to an end. Kalen, Zenkin, are you really going to let this go? So what if 2 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators died? They were all at the initial and middle stages, but the 3 of us are in the late stage. If we do this together, we can still plunder them of everything they have. However, if we retreat now, we're going to be the laughingstock of the South region. The middle-sized tribes couldn't wipe out a small-sized one. Is that really okay with the 2 of you? Yuri, on the other side, started to laugh. Small-sized? If you want to believe that, then so be it. However, I ask you this. If Alanda and I are only 2, and we were fighting on the east and west sides, who killed the Foundation Establishment cultivator who entered through the north? Kalen and Zenkin's eyes open wide. That's right. Alanda and Yuri can't be in 2 places at the same time. And they don't believe that a Foundation establishment would fail to run away even if he was surrounded by energy-gathering realm cultivators. Not to mention that the north side was supposed to have more warriors, so getting surrounded wasn't an option in theory. He is trying to deceive you. That definitely played some trick that killed the north side commander. Otherwise, why is only Alanda and Yuri appearing here at the moment? Where is that helper that killed the north side commander? Yuri laughed once more after hearing that. Isn't that obvious? As long as you don't know who he or she is, you will need to divide your attention at all times. The moment you let your guard down, Yuri stopped talking at that point, but his meaning was clear for all to see. All right, let's do this then. Herschel tribe and Boku tribe are from outside our territory, so you don't need to be that afraid of retaliation from our side. In fact, my Varen tribe will not pursue this issue against you either. Why don't you cut your losses here and we pretend it never happened? Whatever happens with our Varen and the Kianmi tribes in the future will have nothing to do with you. Kalen snorted before asking, and why should we do that? So far, it is only your words that we got and no proof that you can really deal with all of us together. We have lost too much, both in resources and face. We can't just step back anymore. Yasval Kianmi let out a sigh of relief. It seems like they still want to take the Varen tribes over. However, Yuri just kept laughing. Aha! Very well. As a proof of good intention, our Varen tribe will provide the Herschel and Boku tribes a total of 50 steel swords each. If you didn't live in a cave in the past year, you definitely know about our steel swords. In fact, that Foundation establishment over there can testify for their strength. Also, Yuri then raised his sword, which made the commander who battled him sweat cold. He took this chance and quickly sent a spiritual sense message to the 3 leaders. That is the sword which almost destroyed my spiritual mace and suffered no damage whatsoever. Zenkin, Kalen, and Yasval's eyes glued in that sword. Yuri noticed that their attention was caught and continued. I will have one of these swords sent together with the steel swords to your Herschel and Boku tribes. This will be an extra gift of our Varen tribe. Also, we would more than welcome creating a trade route between our tribes, as well as a way of proving our good intentions. How is that? Kalen and Zenkin's eyes brightened. They know the steel swords, but they're now too hard to get. The Varen tribe only puts so many every month, and there is even a queue for those who want one. Getting 50 steel swords, and even that freakish spiritual Kaz sword would definitely boost their powers by a lot. Yasval immediately noticed the convictions of the Kalen and Herschel tribe leaders waver. You can't be serious that you trust him, right? You attacked his tribe and killed several of their warriors. Can such a blood feud really be wiped out this easily? I don't believe so. Besides, once we clear their tribe, all their steel weapons will be yours to start with. Isn't that even better? Kalen and Herschel began to ponder what would be better. Both sides had very attractive ideas. Retreat and trust that the Varen tribe would keep their words. Or attack, and then take everything for themselves. But in that case, there is no guarantee of victory. But it was at this moment that two strong spiritual energy pressures appeared from behind the Varen tribe's walls. That immediately caught Kalen and Zenkin's attention. Their spiritual sense couldn't go far enough to see what cultivation the ones releasing that spiritual pressure had, or their appearances. However, they could tell that they are no weaker than themselves. That meant that whoever those two are, they are probably at the same level as themselves. Yasvel's face also turned pale. The only thing that kept this alliance up was the fact that perhaps the Varen tribe really doesn't have any other Foundation establishment cultivator. However, this conjecture was immediately destroyed. They do have other Foundation establishment warriors, and two at that. After pondering a bit, Zenkin and Kalen nodded at each other. It was evident that forcing this issue would be very detrimental for their tribes. Even if they win now, they can't guarantee that they can kill the other part Foundation establishment warriors. If those four decide to join some other tribe in exchange for help with their revenge, they can think of a few ones that would gladly accept them. At that moment, their tribes would be doomed if they have to fight so many Foundation establishments at once and alone. Yuri Varen, our Herschel and Boku tribes accept your offer. We will send an envoy to discuss the trade route and take the swords in a few days. We hope you will keep your words. Yuri laughed while the spiritual pressures coming from behind him disappeared. Very well. Yuri then turned around and returned inside the tribe. Obviously, he wouldn't distribute the steel swords now, since they might decide to attack, since they are already here. So he will send them a few days later too. As for the Kiami tribe, Yuri wasn't the least bit afraid of them attacking his tribe anymore. They would be sending themselves to their deaths if they did so. Last but not least, taking revenge on the Kiami tribe is not something he can decide right now. Sure enough, the Kiami tribe retreated with the Herschel and Boka ones. Yasvel Kiami tried everything to convince them to fight to the end, but Kalen and Zenkin utterly refused to keep going. It was one thing with only 2 Foundation establishments, but 4 was another story. Once the news that the Varen tribe has 4 Foundation establishment cultivators under their banner spreads, they will be considered a medium-sized tribe. Thanks to that, it wouldn't be too humiliating once their defeat is found out. Besides, they are not leaving without anything. Even though their losses were great, they still have a lot of warriors back in their tribes. The steel swords will provide a huge boost to the remaining warriors. Not to mention that them, the leaders, will get one of those spiritual Kaz sword of the Varen tribe. I recommend that tribe leader Yasvel find a way to apologize. The Varen tribe's wave will be unstoppable from now on. 500 warriors were wiped out while they barely had any losses. It is obvious that what they have is not only those Foundation establishment warriors or the steel weapons. Zenkin then looked at Tonka, the only Foundation establishment that survived the attacks. Tonka, tell him what you told me. Tonka nodded and then explained. Every single warrior of the Varen tribe was much stronger than ours. I'm not talking about cultivation, but combat skills. Especially the ones with swords, their swordsmanships were really cruel. Their defense was also watertight. I'm not kidding when I say that every single energy gathering realm in their middle could fight at least 2 of ours alone and probably still end as the winner. I don't know who is teaching them how to fight, but those were not movements that you can find anywhere in the tribes of the South region. Probably not even in the tribes of the whole Estreg City region. Yasvel sweated cold after hearing that. Every single one of them could fight at least 2 of their warriors and still win. Indeed, it is not something that equipment alone could do. However, Yasvel didn't want to give up. He lost a Foundation establishment today, lost around 170 warriors too. Worst of all, he is not getting any compensation like the Herschel and Boka tribes are. It was just too hard to swallow such losses and still have to apologize. Kalen Boku and Zenkin Herschel didn't care though. They said what they had to say. Whatever Yasvel decided to do in the future was his problem, not theirs. Back in the Varen tribe, Yuri called all the warriors over. After he went up on the stage, Alanda, Rean, and Roan followed. The warriors looked at Rean and Roan with shining eyes. Those two were still just 9-year-old kids, but they were already this strong. If they continued like that, the tribe would prosper even more. There was no jealousy in their eyes. Those two fought by their sides and saved many of their companions. There was nothing more than admiration at the moment. Yuri then looked at everyone before saying, "As you all found out already, Rean and Roan are also at the Foundation Establishment realm. I hid it from you all so that our tribe could keep a trump card under our sleeve." Sure enough, this trump card worked very well, and we showed those guys what our Varen tribe is made of. Whoa! Everyone bellowed at Yuri's words. Although they lost a few of their companions, they died while protecting the tribe. In the tribe's world, dying while fighting for the tribe is considered an honor. Crying over their bodies would only be regarded as disrespectful. The tribe should commemorate its victory and give those warriors all the glory they deserve. All right, call everyone back from the mines. Tomorrow, we will give the warriors who died today a proper burial. After that, we will celebrate our victory with a feast to honor their memories. Yuri kept speaking for a while longer until finally, the tribe members who hid in the mines came back and started to help clean the battlefield. Roan also had some of the warriors who worked with him earlier to move with them to take out the hidden traps he had prepared. Those were supposed to be used in the second phase of his plan in case the war continued, but in the end they had no use. Yuri then called Rean and Roan to his house. Arriving there, they noticed that Alanda was also present. Not only that, but Hamarlia and Turin were there too. The twins didn't seem surprised, though. "I guess it is time for us to leave, yeah?" Yuri looked at Roan, surprised, but he soon remembered who he was talking to. Hamarlia, however, immediately embraced the two of them. She knew that they were in the Foundation establishment, and the tribe needed their help in this war. However, she couldn't help but feel worried. Only after seeing that they were well did she finally relax. As for Turin, he was feeling extremely proud. Yuri told him what Rean and Roan did for the tribe during this war. So how could he not be? But they also heard what Roan just said. What you meant with time to leave. Roan looked at Yuri, waiting for him to explain. It would be hard for him or Rean to do that without Yuri's help. Yuri, of course, understood his intentions. After today's war, Rean and Roan's existence will definitely be found out. It is shameful to say this, but our tribe has no way to protect them. That being said, I have no other choice other than sending them away. It is also for their own good that I'm doing it. Hamarlia and Turin were taken aback. Then I go too. Rean smiled and held his mother's hand. Sorry, mother, but you can't. Hamarlia immediately rebuked him. You brat. What are you saying to your mother? If I say I'm going, then I'm going. End of discussion. However, Roan also refused her. Rean is right. If we are by ourselves, we will be fine. But if we have to divert our attention to protect you, Yuri then began to explain a little more about the Damalis sect. As I mentioned before, our Astreg city is situated in the northeast of the Jalan country. Not only that, but very close to the border at that. Although the Dalamas sect is also on the northeast side, they're a lot closer to the center. So your trip to that place will take quite a few days. Still, you don't need to worry. I have closed our tribe, so no one will be able to enter or leave in these next few days. Thanks to that, the information that Rean and Roan are two kids at the Foundation Establishment realm will not leak out for the time being. This should ensure a safe trip. Fortunately, the next sect entrance exam will be happening in 2 weeks. This is a lot more time than you need to reach there. Of course, I can't send Rean and Roan alone since they are still kids, only in body though. So Alanda will be accompanying them on this trip while I stay behind overseeing the tribe. Yuri then looked at the twins before explaining. You two must understand one thing. You are definitely heaven-defying geniuses in this place where we live. But the closer you get to the sects, the more you will notice that the average power increases. The Dalamu sect gathers all the young geniuses of the entire northeast side of the Jalan country. That being said, you shouldn't feel shocked if you see other young boys at the Foundation establishment like you. Rean and Roan nodded. They had long since understood that they really live in a small corner that almost no one cared. Yuri then continued. Of course, you did that with your own effort. Completely different from those big clans and families who use their wealth to propel their descendants into the same cultivation realm as you two. Besides, even if they had those advantages, most of those in the foundation establishment realm are already over 10 years old. However, this is a good opportunity. You two have been practicing since little, and truth be told, you're quite big for your ages. Part of that is thanks to Hamarlia and Turin, who are tall people to start with. These are some good blood you got there. Hamarlia and Turin couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed after hearing that. Yuri, on the other hand, just laughed. Anyway, you two are turning 10 years old in the next month, but no one will doubt if we say that you are already 12. In the Dalamu sect, a 12 years old foundation establishment will catch some attention, but that is all. There will be quite a few kids between 10 and 13 years old in the same cultivation realm as you two. Once again, I repeat what I said. The majority only got that far thanks to their backgrounds. So don't think that all your effort was for nothing or that you are not talented. If you were born in one of those prominent families, your cultivation would probably be in the middle or maybe even advanced stage already. Rean couldn't help but ask, but isn't it bad for those kids to cultivate too fast? Wouldn't their foundations be damaged because of that? Yuri nodded. They would. However, they don't lack alchemist pills. Between those pills, some can speed up the stabilization of the foundation. Others can strengthen them. Anyway, I guess you understand why they don't have to be afraid of cultivating too fast. To be honest, I really don't know how you got such a sturdy foundation after arriving at the foundation establishment so quickly. Our tribe didn't have anything that could help you with that. Clearly, it was because of me. Obviously, Yuri didn't hear Sister Orb's comment. Cough, cough. We have our tricks. Yuri didn't mind that and continued. Just because you see many similar age kids in the same realm, as you don't mean that you are at the same level. I truly believe that you're not weaker than any of them. Anyway, let's go back to your age. Just say that you are 12 years old to avoid unnecessary suspicion. As for the rest, you can do the way you see fit. There is no way you won't catch attention since you have the light and dark elements and aptitudes. After all, you might as well show a little of your real power to get a good position in the sect. Still, don't exaggerate. You two have no backgrounds, so it is not good to make all those young noble kids jealous of you. The twins nodded. That was how they were intending to do anyway. Very well. You should stay with your parents this night. I will have you two leaving tomorrow morning. Alanda then looked at Yuri and asked, what about that other topic? That's right. Yuri smiled at the twins before saying, I will be sending Ina Malaka with the two of you as well. What? Obviously, the two got shocked after hearing that. Why would you do something like this? We can't guarantee our own safety, let alone hers. Yuri nodded. I know, but after the last war, there will definitely be a lot of investigation. That being said, soon the others will notice the difference in Malaka's cultivation speed as well. Since that is the case, I might as well have her join the Dalamus sect. Don't worry, she is old enough, and with the two of you there, she will not be brainwashed to forget our tribe. Rean and Roan couldn't help but grimace. They couldn't refuse it since what Yuri said was true. Leaving Malaka here might be even more dangerous for her. Besides, joining a sect with her talent would indeed be the best option since the Varen tribe could only do so much for her future. Rean sighed and nodded in the end. Sigh, fine. Malaka is already a little sister for me anyway. Roan didn't say anything, but he didn't refuse it either. Of course, Rean knows that Roan also felt the same way as him. Yuri then talked with everyone for a while before sending them back. He still had to speak with Ina Malaka's family, after all. The next morning, Alanda was already waiting in front of the tribe. Soon Rean and Roan arrived, with Malaka being the last one. Obviously, their parents were there as well to send them off. After a lot of tears of their mothers, Rean, Roan, and Malaka departed with Alanda. Destination, Dalamus sect. Alanda, Rean, and Roan are all in the foundation establishment, so they can keep their travel rhythm. However, Malaka is still in the middle stage of the energy gathering realm, so they had to stop a few times for her to rest. Malaka had followed Roan's orders and really stopped cultivating for a year, so she started again only recently. There was the option to carry her, but all three men immediately refused the idea. More physical movement is good for her and themselves as well. The group stopped by in a city to sleep for the night. Rean and Roan got one room, while Alanda took another one with Malaka. That night, the twins once more entered the Soul Gem dimensional realm. It has been some time since they got enough destiny points to buy the Panther Bones, but just now, they decided to go ahead with it. Sister Orb, how many destiny points we got after winning that tribe war? Sure, the reputation of our tribe will change completely once the news spread, right? Let me check here. That was not so bad. You got another 20 destiny points from that. Oh, that's right. Cough, cough. Congratulations, hosts. After your dash. All right, Roan, we have more destiny points now. So let's take those Panther Bones. Rean cut Sister Orb's speech mercilessly. In fact, if he didn't do that, Roan would definitely have done so. Good. Sister Orb, exchange the points for us. You're no fun. Anyway, you have 105 destiny points in total. After acquiring the Panther Bones, there will be 55 left. Do you confirm your purchase? The twins answered at the same time. Yes. Immediately, Rean and Roan feel on the ground again. The process of changing one's bone's quality is excruciating. However, they know that it is more than worth it. As the twin contorted in pain on the ground, the change gradually took place. 30 minutes later, they were finally over with it. Both Rean and Roan had tears in their eyes when they finished, what Sister Orb found quite funny. Two adults, one of them being countless years old. Still, you can't take a little bit of pain. How shameful, said the orb that doesn't know what pain is. I don't know what it is. Oh, go ahead, tell me more about it. Seeing one adult playing heavy metal while the other showed a few porn scenes during an affinity exam. Those are very painful things to watch. The twins immediately feel on the ground, let alone Rean, and Roan's face went red at that moment. Cough, cough. Those were trials. Yes, we were just testing the level of concentration of each other. Sure, whatever you say. Rean and Roan immediately left the Soul Gem dimensional realm after that. They simply had no face to look at Sister Orb anymore. After that, they looked at each other, and it seemed like they reached the same conclusion. It is never a good thing to underestimate Sister Orb. Anyway, tomorrow, when we resume our travel, we can then test how these new Panther Bones are. After cleaning themselves, they went to sleep as well. Rean and Roan could have chosen the Spiritual Sense Absorption Upgrade Level 1 from the reward list. In the long term, it would have a better return. But they opted for the Panther Bones so that they could have a better boost in power in the short term. They don't know what to expect from this sect entrance exam, so they felt that it was a safer option. The next day, the group was on the road again. Rean and Roan took that opportunity to test the changes in their bodies. They run, used techniques, sparred between themselves and Alanda, etc. In the end, they reached a conclusion that the Panther Bones increased their body strength in another 10%. It's half of what the 8 bones gave to us. Sister Orb, is this correct? Shouldn't the Panther Bones be better? There is nothing wrong with it. The further you go into a path, the harder it becomes. Just so that you know, there are only 2 more levels of Bones upgrade. After that, you will have achieved the max that the system can offer. However, you can still strengthen your bodies after that with the resources of the Cultivation world. It's just that you will need to find it yourselves. Rean and Roan nodded. That indeed made sense. For example, Cultivation gets harder the further you go, so the Bones bonus reduction was well within this logic. The Dalamu sect was located in the south of the city of Meshoria, 300 kilometers away, to be more exact. It was built on the Dalamu spiritual mountain, which gave the sect's name. It was a point where a lot of spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered. Even in the city of Meshoria, it was possible to feel the difference. Of course, the city can't possibly compare to the mountain since it located so far. The reason the city was established at that distance from the sect is that everything in a 300 kilometers radius is considered the Dalamu sect's territory. Anyone who enters without permission could be killed without warning. Thus, all the kids who would be taking part in the exam this time were gathered in the city, waiting for when the sect opened its doors. Alanda's group arrived there 4 days before the sect entrance exam, so they still had some time to look around. Rean decided to visit the blacksmith workshops while Roan passed on the cultivation shops to see what they were selling. Roan was more interested in their weapons skill manuals, to be more specific. In the last tribe war, he understood that no one used skills. They were all relying on the brute force of their spiritual energies. That was one more reason why Roan's plans worked so well. Malaka also wanted to go somewhere by herself, but Alanda quickly held her back. "Why can't I go? You let Rean and Roan have fun, but always keep me behind." "Oomph. That is because they know what they are doing, different from you. When you get older, you'll be able to do the same thing." "That's not fair." "Ha ha. This is the first lesson I'll give you now that you are out of the tribe. The world is not fair." Alanda then looked at Malaka with a serious expression and asked, "By the way, you did not forget what we talked about, right?" Malaka nodded with an annoyed face. "Rean and Roan are 12 years old. I must not tell that they are of the same age as me." "Good. Since you are being cooperative, I will go with you to look around. Where you want to go?" Malaka's eyes immediately brightened, and she quickly dragged Alanda around the city to satisfy her curiosity. Weekly deal. 1,000 power stones equals 2 extra chapters. Every 500 extra equals 1 extra chapter. Power Stones reset happens every Sunday at 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The releases will also happen there. Roan didn't need to look for long to find a shop that sold what he wanted. The name on the front was very suggestive as well. Majoria's Cultivation Treasure Pavilion. It was a 7-stories giant building close to the center of the city. From what was written outside, the place had almost everything: treasures, cultivation techniques, cultivation resources, skill manuals, you name it. But just as Roan was about to enter the shop, he saw a leg coming his way. Out of nowhere, someone was trying to kick him. For a moment, Roan thought about chopping that leg, but he soon remembered that he should avoid causing too big a commotion. Of course, he wouldn't let it simply go either. That being said, he simply punched. Crack! Ergurga! Immediately, everyone looked in his direction. It turns out that the guards in front of the shop saw how Roan was dressed. Roan lived in the Rean tribe until now, so his clothes were very ordinary. Personally, Roan didn't care. Even if he was to walk naked, he wouldn't give a damn. Thanks to that, he never paid attention to his appearance. That guard that tried to kick him away saw those clothes and thought that he was some beggar. This is a prestigious shop in Majoria City, so how could they allow Roan to step inside to bother its customers? Too bad, though. The guard really chose the wrong person to mess with. You brat. The other guard saw his friend's broken leg and was enraged. Without asking for any explanation, he immediately released his power and attacked Roan without mercy. He was really planning to kill him. He took out his sword and quickly slashed at him, intending to cut Roan's head. However, this guy was nothing more than a middle-stage energy-gathering realm cultivator. Seeing that sword, Roan snorted before extending his hand. Pin! The opponent's sword was immediately caught between Roan's fingers. It didn't matter how much strength that guy put in, he couldn't move it at all. Only now, he understood that Roan is far from being the beggar that he thought about. Boom! Crack! With a kick, Roan broke 3 ribs of that guard while sending him flying. Crash! The guard hit the wall before falling on the ground. After that, Roan grabbed the first guard with the broken leg and asked, "What's the meaning of this? Why did you attack me?" The guard was frightened to the point that even the pain in his leg disappeared. But just as he was about to ask for help, "This little young master over there, please forgive our shop's guards." They had eyes but could not recognize Mount Tai. "I hope you can give this old man face and let them go." Roan glanced at the entrance and saw a white-haired man stepping out. The moment Roan's eyes stopped on him, he knew that the guy wasn't simple. At the very least, he wasn't someone Roan could possibly dream of fighting against. Roan then showed a smile and let the guard go. Since this friend came to apologize, I will obviously drop the matter. Still, I didn't know that the city's shop would kick its customers. I came from a small tribe in a remote place, so I apologize if this was the city's customs. The old man laughed out loud after hearing that. Although Roan seemed to be just a kid, his way of using words didn't look like one at all. I can assure you that the city's shops don't have such customs. Still, you can't really blame them. This is a famous shop in the city, so they can't let just anyone enter. They got mistaken and thought this little young master to be a beggar who would bother the shop's customers. Of course, with this young master's cultivation and power, you are far from being someone like that. Please come in. Our Majoria's Cultivation Treasure Pavilion will do its best to satisfy you. Roan nodded and then stepped inside. As for the guards, the other employees quickly brought them away, and soon, another 2 new guards took their places. Roan didn't care about that, though. Once inside, the man took the role of the host. Sorry for the late introduction. My name is Lou Hictus. So, what would this young master be looking for? In fact, he doesn't believe that Roan has much money. Although he is strong, he had seen kids with similar cultivations as Roan hundreds of times during every sect entrance exam. Still, he would probably become someone important in the Damalus sect, since any foundation establishment of his age was sure to have a bright future. There was nothing wrong with building up some good ties while they were young. Roan looked around before saying, I saw written outside that you also sell skill manuals. I want to know if you have a skill better than the one I'm using. Lou quickly nodded. We do have a lot of them for selling. But if you want to compare, I will need to see this young master using yours once. Roan pondered a bit and nodded. The building had a lot of space, so he could simply use one of his skills in midair for Lou to see. Roan didn't take his spiritual cast sword. Instead, he used a wooden sword that he often carried with him. It was basically used to teach the kids back in the Rean tribe. During this trip, he used it against Ina Malaka several times. Roan walked into an empty space before demonstrating one of the skills he developed. He didn't use Rean's light element this time, since it was just a demonstration, so his hair color didn't change when he struck. Death style, 3rd form, 3 claws of the dragon. Swish, swish, swish. 3 identical black swords attacked 3 different points in the air. When Lou saw that, his smile immediately disappeared. All that remained was a shocked expression. He is in the middle stage of the core formation realm, but he couldn't tell which one was real, even with his superior spiritual sense. No, all 3 swords were real. It's just that 2 of them were made of spiritual and elemental energy. Probably, the 2 energy ones were somewhat weaker than the wooden one. Still, they had plenty of attack power, since I couldn't see the difference between them before the attack was over. Seeing the manager's eyes, Roan more or less got the answer he wanted. Still, he asked just in case, do you have anything better than it? Lou looked at Roan before sighing. Some of our sword skills might be on par with your own, but I doubt they would be stronger. Roan was surprised to hear that. He thought that not a single one would compare to his. It seems like I underestimated this place. Great. Show me them. All right. How much do they cost? Lou pointed at a room on the other side of the building. Please come with me. I will bring them for this young master to take a look. We can talk about the price later. Sometime later, Lou brought a few skill manuals for swordsmen. But as Roan looked through then, he noticed something different. Why are all of them made for core formation realm and above? Lou smiled bitterly before asking. My question is different. How can you use such skills without even being in the core formation realm? Roan's eyes narrowed. What you have here is just a general explanation of how they work. Would you mind if I take a look at the real one? Of course, I'm not saying the entire manual, just the first part is enough. Lou pondered a bit before asking. Would you let me take a look at your skills too? Roan immediately accepted. He wanted to confirm his theory about those manuals. He had a few copies of the manuals he made for the Rean tribe members in the Soul Gem dimensional realm, so it was easy for him to bring one out. As the 2 of them looked at the other's manual, they seemed to arrive at the same conclusion. The Meridian's path, the way Roan projected the use of his sword skills, was completely different from the norm. In fact, Lou was surprised that Roan's meridians didn't explode while using this skill. Are you sure you're using that technique with the instructions of this manual? I find it quite hard to believe. Roan then put Lou's manual down before nodding his head. I was the one who created it, after all. Lou looked at Roan as if he was looking at a ghost. You created it? Roan nodded and then made a question of his own. My question isn't much different from yours. How come you guys can't see the waste of energy when using this sword skill with such a messed up path? Sure, it is a lot easier if you ask me, but at the same time, you lose way too much energy on the process. To be very honest, I can't think about any other word than ugly when I look at this skill. especially since you can only use it at the core formation realm or above. That is one more defect of those points to connect the spiritual energy. Lou narrowed his eyes after hearing that. Although Roan really looked like a kid, he can't help but somehow believe his words. Of course, he still had many doubts. Roan noticed that, and then suggested, "Why don't you give a quick try with mine? This is the same skill you saw back there, the third form of the death style, 3 claws of the dragon. Of course, you won't be able to use it in the end since I only gave you a small part of the manual. Still, you should be able to confirm if the path of the meridians that I found out is wrong or not. It wouldn't cause you any harm either, since you will only try it for a few seconds." Lou pondered a bit and had to admit that Roan was right. "Very well. Give me a few minutes to get used to it." Roan smiled after hearing that. Sure enough, someone with higher cultivation can learn much faster. Not to mention that as manager of this place, he had seen all the techniques for sale, so his knowledge and experience were much higher. Roan thought that this man would take at least an hour before being able to do it. But it seems like he won't need to wait for much. Around 12 minutes later, Lou opened his eyes again. Spiritual energy then started to gather around him. Since he wouldn't be able to use it, there was no need for a sword. He only tried out that crazy meridian's path that Roan suggested. At first, he began very slowly, afraid that he might hurt himself. But as time passed, his expression changed. In the end, there was nothing but disbelief in his eyes, let alone hurting himself. He even felt comfortable using his meridians, as if this was the way it was supposed to be since the very start. Lou couldn't hold his excitement before asking, "How much do you want for the full copy of this technique?" Roan pondered a bit before smiling. "I don't need any payment, but I do want to see all your techniques with similar attack power." "Deal." Lou understood from the very start the value of this technique. Not only would you be able to use it in the Foundation establishment, but even energy-gathering realm cultivators could also do so. Of course, the energy-gathering ones would take a very long time to get proficient enough to use it. However, it was totally worth it. As far as he knows, only the sects and big cultivator families have secret techniques that allow their descendants to use some skill before the core formation realm. Even so, he doubts that there are many available for energy-gathering ones. Not too long after, the employee entered the room, carrying several manuals for several types of weapons. At the same time, Roan wrote down the complete manual explaining how to use the death-style third form. Lou quickly left after that, leaving Roan on his own in the room. Immediately after, he went upstairs to practice this technique himself. At his cultivation level, he wouldn't need more than a few hours to be able to use it at a basic level. If nothing goes wrong, then he made a really great deal today. Roan didn't mind it, since he would also take a few hours to browse through all those skill manuals. What he wanted was not to learn them, but to use as a reference for future skills that he will develop. The death style only had 5 forms, and so far, he had only used 4 of them. Roan kept the 5th one hidden as a trump card. Only he and Rean knew about it. Roan wasn't afraid of others using his death style third form against him. The reason for that was quite simple. That is not the full version of the third form. The full version used 2 elements at the same time, which are Rean and Roan's dark and light elements. Also, it needed the support of the 104th meridian, something that others simply didn't have. If someone really used it against him or Rean in the future, they would be courting Roan, cough, cough, courting death. As Roan spent his time looking through the skill manuals, Rean wasn't idle either. He went straight to the biggest workshop in Majoria's city, the janitor's weapons store. Arriving there, he was more or less treated the same way as Roan. The only difference was that he didn't break the guard's bones, but made a fool of them. They tried to stop him, but he dodged as if it was nothing and entered the building. The guards quickly followed and tried to catch him quite a few more times. Rean, on the other hand, just laughed. It wasn't until the chief blacksmith came out to see what was all that commotion that they finally stopped. Of course, he immediately noticed that Rean's cultivation was far higher than the guards, and immediately sent them back to their posts. By now, all the customers had already gathered to see what was happening. It wasn't every day you see a kid acting as he pleases in a place like this. However, the chief blacksmith wasn't as polite as Lou in the treasure pavilion. "Brat, I don't know where you are from, but don't cause any more trouble. If you came to buy a weapon, there are several on display. so just chose one. Of course, it would depend on whether you have the money for it or not. If you came just to cause trouble, then I'll deal with you myself, so you better behave. Just as the chief blacksmith was about to turn around and go back to work, Rean threw his sword at him. What is the meaning of this? Rean smiled before asking. I want you to give it a look and tell me what you think. The chief blacksmith of the workshop narrowed his eyes. Usually, he wouldn't pay attention to a kid, but considering Rean's cultivation, he thought that perhaps this was a good sword given by his elders. It was at least worth taking a look at it. As he removed the sheet, a smooth, light blue spiritual sword appeared in front of his eyes. The first impression he had was that this sword was really beautiful. He understood that it was made of spiritual Kaz, but it was his first time seeing one with this color. Spiritual Kaz swords would usually be dark blue. After all, I admit, this is a gorgeous sword, but being nice is not what matters when we talk about weapons. Rean immediately nodded. That's correct, so go ahead and test it in whatever way you see fit. I want to see if my sword can cut through the weapons of this workshop. I don't mind, even if you use a high-level material sword in the process. Everyone in the shop went into an uproar. They all thought that Rean came here to cause trouble. The chief blacksmith couldn't help but laugh, though. Ha ha! Brat, you are funny. There's no need to use a high-level sword. Any low-level sword of our workshop is definitely much better than commons, swords you get in other places. It would be more than enough to destroy this pretense of sword of yours. However, clashing both swords against each other would still leave a mark on our product. Can you pay for it? Rean nodded. I saw the prices. The most expensive low-level one is 2,000 rank 1 spirit stones, right? I can pay that without a problem, so you don't need to feel concerned. The conversation around increased even more after that. The chief blacksmith narrowed his eyes once more. Rean totally didn't look like someone from a wealthy family. But after seeing all the eyes around, he couldn't simply step back. It was the honor of his workshop at stake now. Very well, but you better be prepared for the consequences if it turns out that you can't pay for our sword. By the way, my name is Falca Janariz, the chief blacksmith of the Janariz weapon store. Rean laughed and introduced himself as well. Rean Larks, I came this time around to participate in the Dalamu sect exam entrance. Falca turned around and called 2 of his workshop blacksmiths. Both of them were already over 40 years old and the Foundation establishment realm middle stage. As for Falca himself, he was already in the core formation realm. You two have the same cultivation. Saran, you will take this brat's sword. Lazio, you will use our workshop garnilia or sword. Don't hold back. I want to see this thing destroyed in one clash. Saran and Lazio nodded and took the swords. After that, everyone in the workshop opened a space in the center to let those 2 test the swords. But before the clash, Rean took a look at the garnilia or sword that Falca would use against his spiritual Kaz sword. As expected, a blacksmith workshop from a more developed place is totally different. At the very least, he knows how to work with alloys. This garnalia or sword has other materials used in it too. Compared to a Streg City one's, this is a much better piece of equipment. Still, it was then that a smile appeared on Rean's face again. It is far from enough. Rean then threw the sword back at Lazio. With everything ready, both sides prepared to attack. But as soon as Saran began to use his spiritual energy with Rean's spiritual Kaz sword, it began to gather the surrounding light element. Particles of white light could be seen entering the sword without stop. That was Rean's sword effect. As long as there is spiritual energy, his sword will keep gathering light element. Let alone Saran and Lazio. Even Falca opened his eyes wide when he saw that. He had never seen a sword that can gather light element before. In fact, he had never seen light element being used to start with. However, it was already too late if he wanted to stop them. Saran and Lazio were surprised for a second, but they didn't forget what they were here for. Both sides didn't waste any more time and immediately attacked each other's swords. Swish! The spiritual Kaz sword passed through the Garnalia's sword, instantly cutting it in half. Of course, both Saran and Lazio didn't try to protect their swords with spiritual energy. All the spiritual energy used was to increase the sword's attacks, leaving nothing for defense. Otherwise, the Garnalia sword wouldn't break straight away. A good example of it was Yuri and Alanda's battles during the last tribe war. Although their spiritual Kaz swords were much better than the enemy's weapons, they couldn't cut through them straight away. It took quite a few clashes before the enemy's foundation establishments had to retreat. Even so, their weapons hadn't been completely destroyed. Falca, Saran, and Lazio looked absent-minded at the spiritual Kaz sword. They know very well the difference between spiritual Kaz and spiritual Garnalia ores. Although both are considered low-level materials, spiritual Garnalia is much better than spiritual Kaz. Still, it was their spiritual Garnalia sword that was completely destroyed. Rean then took his spiritual Kaz sword back and, at the same time, gave a big back from his waist to Falca. Thanks for complying with my request. As promised, here are 2,000 rank 1 spirit stones. It should be more than enough to pay for your Garnalia spiritual sword. Falca was taken aback. Their workshop had just lost miserably in blacksmithing skills, but this kid was still paying for the broken sword. Oomph. Are you looking down on me? Since our workshop lost this exchange, I will never accept your payment. Rean smiled and turned around, preparing to leave. Wait there. I refuse to believe that you came here just for this exchange. Am I right? Come with me. I will listen to what you have to say. Rean laughed before saying, I do have a few things to talk indeed, but it will be after the Dalmas sect entrance exam is over. Don't worry whether I pass or not. I will be back. Rean then left the workshop without even waiting for an answer. Seeing Rean leaving just like that didn't bother Falca. He knew what Rean wanted to do. Simply put, Rean needed a background before starting any negotiation. The Damalus sect just so happened to be a perfect one. Hee. You dare talk about passing or not? If someone like you fail to pass the Damalus sect entrance exam, then the others will only waste their time there. Falca turned around and returned to his job. He knew that Rean would definitely come back. He will see what Rean has to say when that time comes. This was Rean's biggest problem. The Varen tribe could only do so much in the place it was located. Astreg City is, after all, a remote area with limited access to things. But if Rean uses this workshop instead, things would get much easier. The Zafa Bank would be okay as long as they get their share of the money. The metals produced by his Varen tribe are ultimately theirs to use as they see fit. Anyway, I will see what I can do after the exam is over. Rean then returned to the hotel where his group was staying. Because there were too many kids and their family members coming for the exam this time, the number of rooms was limited. It wasn't after Alanda offered 50 spirit stones per day that they finally got one room. Alanda's heart bled as he gave the spirit stones over. He even thought about sleeping outside with the kids while they waited for the exam to come. But after thinking that they passed several days outside already, he changed his mind. The exam was coming soon, and it was better to let Rean, Roan, and Inna have a proper rest in the next few days. Alanda couldn't be blamed for thinking like that. Until a few years ago, 50 spirit stones were a great fortune for any warrior in the Varen tribe. Even though it is only rank 1 spirit stones, it is still a treasure for them. Suddenly, he needed to pay 50 of those per day just to have a nice room to sleep. How could he not feel pain after that? Rean noticed that he was the only one in the room, so he simply sat on the bed and began to cultivate. On Roan's side, he had finally finished looking through all the manuals. As he was leaving the room, Lou appeared while showing an excited expression. I tested out your 3 claws of the dragon. The Meridian's path that you created is indeed excellent. Even an energy-gathering realm cultivator would be able to use it. However, I noticed that your manual was called Death Style 3rd Form. Does it mean you have the other 2 forms? Or perhaps later forms as well? Roan smiled before nodding. I do, but they are my personal skills. I can't simply divulge them this easily. It was because you allowed me to look at all the weapon skills that I let you look at that one of mine. Lou nodded. I imagined as much. However, is there nothing you would want to exchange for them? Our Cultivation Treasure Pavilion has a lot more to offer than just skill manuals. In fact, this is just a branch. Depending on what you want, I don't mind contacting the headquarters to have your wishes fulfilled. Roan was surprised to hear that. He knew almost nothing about the outside world. He had only selected this shop because it was the biggest one. He didn't expect that this was only a branch. That's very tempting. However, I don't want anything else other than skill manuals at the moment. Let's see. I'm going to take part in the Damalus sect exam entrance, so I won't be able to spend more time here. I need to practice and get ready for it. Maybe I will stop by once I'm done with it. How about that? Lou nodded. That is more than enough. Although I won't say something that the skills I can get are better than the Dalamus sect, at least you won't need credits to see them. As long as we conclude the trade, you can have them straight away. The word credits made Roan puzzled for a second, but he soon understood what Lou meant. I see. This Dalamus sect restricts the access to the skill manuals, am I right? Lou was the one to get surprised this time. Wait, you didn't know? Roan shook his head. How would he know something like that back in the Rean tribe? It was simply impossible. I didn't, but now I do. Anyway, it does make sense for them to have such a system. Once I get inside, I can check how it works. Roan then made his way through the door when suddenly something came flying in his direction. However, it wasn't anything dangerous. It was a green token with the image of a turtle carrying a merchant backpack. This is... Lou smiled before explaining. It's our Cultivation treasure shop token. As long as you show it to any of our branches around the Jalan country, you could get a 10% discount on almost all products. Roan didn't have much interest, but he recognized that Rean might make good use of it. Besides, it was evident that Lou was trying to create some good ties with him. He probably thinks that I have some hidden background. Well, this is also good for my side. Thanks, it will be very useful. After Roan left, an employee came close to Lou to ask, should we have someone following him? Lou immediately shook his head. That won't be necessary. That kid is anything but simple, so we better not take the risk. The employee nodded his head and retreated. Lou also looked in the direction that Roan left while pondering. His confidence, he was simply fearless, as if no one would ever dare to touch him. As for this technique, if the enemy doesn't know about it beforehand, you might win the fight in the very first clash. I can feel the vicious thoughts behind the creation of this thing. Lou then laughed a little. Interesting. Sometime later, Roan, Alanda, and Malaka returned. For some reason, Alanda seemed to be very tired, utterly different from Ina Malaka, who was full of energy and excited after everything she saw. She had never been to a big city before. Their group had passed through a few others on the way here, but they only slept and departed on the very next day. Before leaving the Rean tribe, Malaka only had the opportunity to go out for the hunts. So how could she not be like that? Malaka is the only real kid in this group, after all. Alanda then went to his bed and started to cultivate. He didn't even want to talk at the moment. Seeing that, Rean couldn't help but laugh. He then patted Malaka's head, something that he got used to doing. Malaka, too, was used to it, and as a kid, she quite liked it. Roan, on the other hand, just looked at her and said, all right, you followed my words and didn't cultivate for an entire year. During our sparrings on the way here, I could tell that your foundation has already recovered. So you should focus on cultivation again, go to bed, and put some effort into it. Malaka nodded. All right, I can finally try to catch up with you two again. You will see, I will definitely pass you. Roan just shrugged his shoulders. Is that so? Then I want to see it. Malaka turned around and immediately went to bed. After taking a few spirit stones from her small bag, she quickly started to cultivate. Roan then reached his bag and took out a green token before throwing it at Rean. I got this from the Cultivation Treasure Pavilion. They said that you can get discounts in any of their branches when you use it. I don't have much of a use for this token since you are the one managing expenses, so you might find a better use for it than me. Rean looked at it and nodded. The Cultivation Treasure Pavilion is quite big here in this country, so it is good that you got this. Still, why did they give it to you? Roan just gave a little explanation, not minding it too much. However, Rean was surprised that Roan gave his technique away this easy. But when he thought that Roan got access to all the other techniques, he had to admit that it was quite a good deal. Besides, he also knows that the death style forms that they use are different from the ones that Roan passed to the others. Well, if you're okay with it, I won't say anything. Roan also joined Rean, and they started to cultivate again. A few hours later, their group went to sleep, finishing the day. The days passed, and soon, the entrance exam was about to start. At the south gate of the Majoria's city, thousands of kids between 9 and 13 years old were waiting for it to be open. The entrance exam didn't allow anyone above 13 to participate, so it couldn't be helped. There were even a few who were even younger, like 8 or 7 years old. However, they were really the minority. Cultivators usually can only start cultivating at the age of 5. So coming for the entrance exam so soon might not be a good idea. The kid would not have had enough time to train, after all. He or she would have a big chance of doing poorly during the exam, too. Because of that, those under the age of 9 usually have something to distinguish them from others. For example, their aptitude or elemental affinity. Reans was quite shocked to see that many kids, but they soon calmed down, except for Malaka, of course. Still, Alanda made sure to hold her back to prevent any accident. That is because at the very front, closest to the south gate, several cultivators who looked much older were staying there beside their kids. Rean, Roan, and Alanda couldn't feel their cultivation at all, but they were sure that it was not because they were ordinary people. There is no doubt that those elders are all far above the Foundation establishment realm, and came together to protect their descendants. The majority looked quite arrogant and showed an ugly face every time they looked at the kids packed behind them. Rean, Roan, and Alanda didn't give a damn, though. It made no difference for them whether they entered first or last. As long as they can take the exam, they'll be fine. Suddenly, everyone looked to the sky. That was because they could see 3 people floating there, right above the south gate. In fact, even Rean and Roan were surprised by that. They didn't expect that flying was possible in this place. Roan, can you invent something that can make us fly as well? Roan shook his head. I don't even know if what they are using is a skill to start with. How do you expect me to create one too? Besides, do you know how hard it is to create a technique? I might take years to create something like that. It was then that another kid beside them spoke. Oh, so you don't know them? Rean's group quickly looked at him. The kid seemed to be around 12 or 13 and was accompanied by an elder that was in the Foundation establishment. It's just that the elder was already at the peak of that realm. Julio, stop talking and concentrate on the exam. Uncle One, it is okay. I will just tell them about those sect elders. The Uncle One just sighed but didn't say anything else. Rean then immediately stepped forward. They're sect elders? Julio nodded. Yes. Can you see the red badges on their robes? That is the Dalamu sect emblem. The fact that their emblems are red-colored means that they are elders. Rean smiled while looking at Julio. It was an excellent chance to make a few things clear. Can you tell us about those badges? Julio nodded. Father told me that the elders have red badges. The Dalamu sect also has badges for its disciples and menial workers. Of course, there are also the protectors and other types of members like alchemists, blacksmiths, etc. According to what my father said, it goes like this. Gray badges represent the menial disciples. These ones aren't really disciples, but were given a chance to live in sect. The spiritual energy there is much higher than any other ordinary place. So those disciples gladly accept this position, especially when they don't have enough talent to be an official disciple. As the name says, they were responsible for the menial jobs, like cleaning, cooking, etc. These menial disciples are also the most common ones inside the sect. Yellow badges represent the outer sect disciples. Between the official members of the sect, these are the most ordinary ones. They have access to the least amount of spirit stones and other cultivation resources. They also must complete any mission given by the sect and can't refuse. The next one is Green Badge's disciples. These ones are part of the inner sect. They have many more spirit stones per month and the freedom to select any mission as long as it is within their capabilities. Also, they have access to the formations inside the sect to train. As for what kind of formations are available there, my father didn't know. Finally, there are the blue badges. They represent the core disciples. My father didn't know much about them, but he warned me that I should never disrespect one. If possible, try to have as little contact with them as possible. Inside the sect, they rule above all the other disciples, so no one would complain even if they killed an outer sect disciple, for example. Rean and Roan narrowed their eyes. Isn't this too much for authority abuse? Uncle One, who was beside Julio, then added another piece. Don't worry, core disciples are few and far between. Just the chance of encountering one before entering the sect is as hard as becoming one yourself. As long as you don't go out of your way to seek a problem with them, you should be fine. Rean immediately bowed after hearing that. Thank you, Senior. That uncle nodded and returned his attention to the front. After blue comes red, which means the sect elders. I understand it now. Does it mean that the sect leader has a purple badge? Julio nodded. Exactly, but not only the sect leader. The ancestors that stay in the sect to protect it can also be recognized by their purple badges. Another thing, there are differences between the badges of all elders. You can identify it by the color as well. Light red is an outer sect elder. Just red means an inner sect one. For example, those elders at the south gate are inner sect elders. Dark red means a core sect elder. Of course, those are just as hard to find as the core disciples. Also, there are a few other colors, but those represent the different side occupations like alchemy, blacksmith, formations, etc. You will learn more about it if you enter the sect later. Roan then asked something else. Do you know why they can fly? Is that a technique? Only now did Julio remember that Rean and Roan were talking about the flying elders. It is not a technique. Once you reach the core and soul fusion realm, you'll be able to use the spiritual energy's power inside your dantian to accomplish the same thing. Of course, it will take a very long time until any of us reach that level. Roan nodded. As he looked at those elders, it didn't seem that the wind element was being used to keep them afloat. So Roan thought that perhaps it wasn't really a skill. Sure enough, Julio confirmed that he was correct. All right, do you know what kind of test we will take this time? Julio looked at Uncle One, who just shrugged his shoulders. Didn't your father tell you? They change it every single year. No one knows what it is until the test finally starts. Rean and Roan thought that it was the correct decision. It would ensure a higher degree of fairness during the exam. If the sect is really looking for the best disciples, then not giving anyone the advantage was the best option. As Rean exchanged a few more words with Julio, another elder arrived at the scene. He had the same red color badge, which proved that he was an inner elder as well. However, the other three seemed to treat him with a lot of respect. That guy's probably in a higher position in the inner sect. It was then that everyone heard that elder's voice. Welcome, everyone. Today, the annual Dalamus sect entrance exam will finally start. Anyway, I won't waste anyone's time anymore. If you are here, then you should know what we want. Only the best ones can enter the Dalamus sect. It's that simple. That elder then continued. First, those who are accompanying the kids will wait here. None of you can enter the sect premises until I say so. That is to prevent the old ones from playing some tricks to help their kids. Once we open the Majoria City South Gate, the test will begin. Majoria City is located 300 kilometers away from the sect entrance. There are around 15,000 kids in this place at the moment, so I'll make it simple. The first 5,000 to arrive at the sect entrance can participate in the second part of the exam. That's all, good luck. Before anyone could ask anything, the south gate began to open. The quick-witted kids immediately dashed forward, fully displaying their cultivations. Still, Rean's group was taken aback to how simple it was. Isn't it too unfair? Those with higher cultivation will obviously arrive first. Uncle One patted Julio's head while he looked at Rean's group. Do you think it is this simple? Trust me, I don't know what it is, but merely having higher cultivation will not be the determining factor. He then looked at Julio and smiled. Good luck, Brad. Your parents are counting on you. Yes, Uncle One. Julio then dashed forward, promptly following the other kids. Rean and Roan nodded before looking at Alanda. Well, we are going. Alanda smiled at them. Take care, Malaka. Rean, Roan, and Malaka then quickly departed as well. However, as soon as they passed through the gate, they noticed a big problem. Rean and Roan couldn't help but look at each other while grimacing. Sure enough, it wouldn't be that easy. As they passed through the gate, their cultivation instantly disappeared. It was not that they had been crippled, but that there was a formation covering the entire way, 300 kilometers, that prevented any spiritual energy from being used. That being said, the kids would need to depend on their own bodies to reach the end. Rean couldn't help but comment. A marathon, and a very harsh one at that. Roan nodded, but didn't say anything. As the kids' speed dropped after traversing the gate, the elder who talked with everyone smiled. Talent is good and all, but talent without effort means nothing. Only those who practiced every day will have built up their bodies to the point where they can conclude this test. As for those who simply sat inside their fancy houses using all the free spirit stones and cultivation resources given to them by their families, the elder then looked at the side to ask, "Are the resting places ready?" The elder beside him bowed before answering, "Yes, Elder Julian. We set up one resting place where they can eat and sleep every 50 kilometers. Not to mention that there's a font of water available for them every 5 kilometers. We also have several outer sect disciples along the road to rescue the kids who can't continue anymore. Those kids will then be brought back here for those responsible for them to retake those children." Elder Julian nodded, satisfied. This elder was one of the 10 elders in charge of the inner sect. Different from most, he didn't have a significant aptitude, being only a yellow color. However, through his own immense effort, his cultivation improved, and he reached the position that he is today. Every year's test would be done according to the elder in charge's whims. So for someone who loves effort like Julian, a trial aimed at this topic was to be expected. There were quite a few who didn't like his methods, and that put aptitude above all, but few could really hold their own against Julian. In their eyes, exceptions like Julian are too rare to be counted. Elder Julian looked behind and saw that all the kids had passed through the gate already. "All right, close the gate. I will be presiding over this test myself. If I see any of the outer sect disciples giving some hidden help to those pompous young masters, you should know what will happen." Julian then took flight and disappeared from their sight. There have been several instances in the past that some members of the same clan would help their young ones to bypass the rules. But when it came to Elder Julian's time, no one dared to do so. That's because not only that outer sect disciple will be killed on the spot, but the kid he tried to help would be going to hell with him. Some had tried to do that in the past, but almost none lived. Back on the road, Rean and Roan instantly decreased their pace. The majority of the kids in the front kept running forward, completely forgetting the 300 kilometers ahead of them. They only thought about being between the first 5,000. However, how could Rean and Roan not understand what this meant? Be it the other kids or themselves, they all have undeveloped bodies. It is simply impossible for them to keep that high pace for more than a few minutes. Malaka, on the other hand, didn't think about any of this. "Rean, Roan, we are falling behind. Quick, let's run faster." But just as she was about to rush forward, Rean and Roan held each of her hands. "Out of the question. You will run just like we are doing." Rean nodded. "Don't worry, we will definitely pass this test. Just do as Roan says." Malaka sulked a bit since she didn't like to see all the kids passing ahead of her. She even tried to escape and run ahead by herself. Still, Rean and Roan held her hands tight, not allowing her to move a single step away from them. In the end, she could only give up and do as they said. But Malaka didn't feel sad for long. Soon, their group of 3 started to pass by several kids who were sitting on the ground gasping for air. At first, it was only one or another, but soon there were tens and then hundreds of kids in the same condition. See? That's why I told you to not run ahead. You will get tired too fast, and then you will lose in the end. Trust your big brothers and keep following us. We might not be the very first to arrive, but we definitely are going to pass it. Malaka's eyes shined, and she immediately nodded. Okay. Rean and Roan finally let her hands go, since it was quite bothersome to run without freely moving their arms. Soon, 20 minutes went by. Rean's group then stopped jogging and started to walk. Are we not running anymore? I could still run much more. Malaka, of course, got confused. However, Rean just laughed. Ha ha ha. Don't worry, this is also part of the plan. Just trust Roan and me. Rean, Roan, and Malaka had put a lot of effort into their other training besides cultivation, especially since Roan was quite Spartan about it. So their 3 bodies were quite in good shape. Not to mention that they received the nurturance of spiritual energy until now. Even if they can't use spiritual energy during this test, their bodies were definitely more enduring than ordinary kids at the same age. Roan was the guy who was responsible for Rean and Malaka's training, so Rean left it for him to do all the calls. His plan was very obvious. They could still run a lot more than they did, but Roan knew it would be prejudicial in the long term. He looked at Rean and Malaka and could already see the sweat on their bodies. That's why they began to walk instead. Once again, several kids began to pass them. But this time, Malaka didn't complain. She already believed that Roan was telling the truth. Additionally, Roan becomes pretty scary when she doesn't follow his words. Time passed, and over 5 hours went by. Roan would continuously check Malaka and Rean's condition to tell when they should jog, walk, or stop completely to rest. They also paused to drink some water prepared by the sect on the way. By now, the kids who didn't know how to control their pace had fallen far behind them, which made Malaka very happy. Sure enough, a 9-year-old kid like her was easy and hard to deal with. Finally, after keeping this progress for almost 8 hours, they spotted something in the distance. As they got close, Rean and Roan couldn't help but smile. Just as we thought, they really left some resting points for us. Let's stay there for 30 minutes, and then we can continue on our way. Make sure to eat your fill so that you won't feel hungry later. However, they were surprised after they arrived. Julio was also there together with a few other kids. Julio got up and greeted them. However, it was evident that he was quite tired. Hey, so you also made this far already. Seems like being in the first 5,000 won't be a problem for you. Rean greeted him back too. From the looks of it, forget 5,000. I will be impressed if even half of it can make till the end. Rean was correct. The majority of kids didn't have the mental fortitude to run without the support of their spiritual energy. In the very first 50 kilometers, more than 3,000 already gave up, let alone all the 300 kilometers. Roan didn't waste time and immediately grabbed the food available for everyone. Stop wasting time and eat. We are leaving in 30 minutes. Malaka and Rean nodded and ate the food given to them. However, Roan didn't take too much, just enough to satiate their hunger. Too much food would only make things harder for them. They took 8 hours to reach the first resting post, but Roan is pretty sure that they will need more than 10 to arrive at the next one. He also took some of the food and stuffed inside his and the other two's bags. His plan was to stop to rest somewhere in the middle between the 2 posts and rest 30 or so minutes before restarting. Naturally, he would need food again. Julio also sat down and kept eating his food. As Roan looked at that, he warned him, "You're eating too much. It will definitely affect your performance if you try to run with too much food in your stomach. Stop for now and put some into your bag." Julio looked at Roan and then at Rean and Malaka. He noticed that they were indeed eating a lot less than him. After pondering a bit, he nodded his head and put the food inside his bag as well. "Okay, I will trust you." Roan nodded and continued to eat as well. He simply gave that advice because Julio and his uncle helped answer their questions back in the city. Otherwise, he wouldn't even bother to say anything. 30 minutes later, Rean's group got up again. Are we going already?" Malaka was still feeling tired and especially bored with all the movement. In fact, even Julio was surprised, seeing that they were leaving so soon. However, Roan didn't care. He was the one who did all the kids' training back in the Rean tribe, so he knew very well that Malaka could keep going. "No complaining, or there will be no food for you until we reach the next post." Malaka sulked a bit, but still got up as well. But before leaving, Roan cast one last look at Julio. "If you want, you can come as well. Considering the fact that you reached this place ahead of us, you probably received a lot more training than just cultivation and battle. It's just that you don't know how to administrate your pace. As long as you follow us, you will be able to arrive much faster." Roan had a good impression of this Julio. Besides, it was a lot easier for him to see others' pretense with his experience. He had seen countless plots where people wore masks and ended killing someone. After all, he was there to collect their souls, so it was way too easy for him to tell. Considering the time he had lived, there wouldn't be many out there that can pretend in front of him. That being said, he was pretty sure that Julio really helped them out of his own will without any ulterior motives. Julio's eyes then brightened before nodding. "Okay." Rean was quite surprised at that scene, though. "Oh, my beloved brother, since when did you become a good Samaritan?" "Shut up." They resumed their jog, taking their time to walk and rest when Roan said so. Sure enough, the few kids that were still ahead of them began to fall behind too. Nighttime came, and the decrease in the ambient temperature helped them a little. The Dalamu sect had prepared everything, including a well-illuminated path until the sect entrance. That way, the kids could keep their journey even during the night. As Roan expected, their group really took over 10 hours to reach the next rest point. However, they were not the only ones there. They could see quite a few kids already sleeping or just resting. Since they couldn't rely on their cultivation, they could only depend on their body's natural recovery. All right, we will rest and sleep here for the next 8 hours. Rean, I will leave you to look after us in the first 4 hours. After that, wake me up, and I will watch the next 4. They might be inside the Dalamu sect territory, but Roan simply wouldn't let his guard down. Rean nodded without complaining. If Malaka wasn't with them, Rean and Roan could have done a lot more in this marathon. So they were the ones in the best condition. Even if it was 4 hours of sleeping, they would be okay with just that. However, Malaka is different, so they had to give her a proper sleeping time if they want to arrive in the sect intact. Besides, Julio was there as well. What about me? I can watch during the night, too. Chop. Roan hit her head while showing an angry face. Go eat, and then sleep. Rean and I are more than enough to watch over the night. Just as Malaka was about to complain while rubbing her head, Rean did that for her instead. Ha ha, don't worry. Roan said that because you are our secret weapon, if something wrong happens, we will be too tired to protect ourselves. So we will need to rely on you to protect us. But if you don't sleep well, we will drive the bad guys away. Malaka's eyes shine like the sun before nodding excitedly. Okay. Julio couldn't help but feel a little jealous of them. He was a single child and spent most of his time training. Julio didn't have many interactions like that with other kids either. Besides, he is 12 years old, 3 years more than Malaka, so he could at least tell that Rean and Roan were doing it simply because they cared about her, although their way of treating her was quite different. I can help with the watch too. Roan shook his head. You should sleep as well. I can see how the soreness on your body too. If you sleep little this night, you won't be able to keep with our pace tomorrow. Don't worry. Rean and I are different from you and Malaka. For us, 4 hours of sleep is much more than we need. Julio seemed a little hesitant, but nodded in the end. First of all, he was supposed to sleep alone, so having someone to watch would be good. His thoughts were that simple. Not to mention that, for some reason, he felt like he could trust Rean and Roan. Okay, but wake me up if something happens. The twins nodded, and Rean sat down close to the place where they would rest. Roan didn't waste any time and stuffed the food in his mouth before falling asleep instantly. Roan's control over his own body and mind was really awe-inspiring. However, there was a certain someone looking at all the kids in the second post without them knowing, especially at the 4 of them. He was floating in the skies, so high that even Rean and Roan would have difficulty noticing him. Those twins, quite impressive. Even after an entire day, their bodies are far from their limit. Besides, the way they treat the one they care about is commendable. That is exactly what my side needs. Let's see how you will fare in the last 200 kilometers. That cultivator was none other than Elder Julian, the one presiding over the entire exam this time around. The night passed without any significant events. Roan had slept for 4 hours again, and Rean slept after him. In the morning, Roan stuffed even more food into their bags before departing once again. By now, it became quite hard to see other kids anymore. The significant majority didn't know who to regulate their pace. Sure, there were a few ahead of them as the same as behind, but the numbers had been continuously decreasing. Roan kept regulating how they would keep moving in this journey, always selecting the best moment to take rests. They didn't know, but their group was already in the top 50 kids at the front. The only ones ahead of them were kids who also received proper training other than just cultivation and battle. Another day went by uneventfully. Just like the previous time, they advanced another 2 posts. Roan already noticed that they were placed around 50 kilometers between each other, so now that they arrived at the 4th, it meant that there was only one more. After the next, it would be the sect entrance. Once again, Rean and Roan shared the times of watching while Malaka and Julio slept. Although it looked like nothing much, over 10,000 kids already gave up for several motives. Sure enough, without the adults watching over them, most just couldn't keep their focus on this task. The 3rd day, Rean's group was caught by some rain, which soaked them completely. However, it also helped with the heat. Finally, around midnight on the same day, they were able to see the sect entrance. It was also possible to see a board at the front with a few names and positions on it. Immediately, Rean and Roan noticed that those were the kids that arrived before then. In total, the board had 42 names, making their group the numbers 43 to 46. They didn't feel sad, though. As much as they excelled in this first test, the fact is that it was quite strenuous. Malaka, especially, couldn't care less about her position anymore. The moment she passed through the Dalamu sect entrance, she collapsed on the ground. Of course, Roan knew very well that it was just her playing dead. She simply didn't want to do anything anymore. Malaka then raised her head to say, "Rean, please carry me. I can't walk anymore." Chop! Another hit on the head, and she quickly looked at Roan with an angry expression that couldn't really scare anyone. If anything, people would only find it cute. "Stop wasting time and come. They also prepared a place for us to rest. So let's go." Rean shook his head, but he didn't help her either. Spoiling Malaka too much wouldn't be right. He preferred to pat her head as a reward for when she finished her tasks. They haven't really ended the run yet, which wouldn't be over before they reached the post a few hundred meters ahead. Julio, on the other hand, found it very funny. Finally, they arrived at the post prepared for this first test and gave their name and ages. Rean Larks, 12 years old. Roan Larks, 12 years old. Julio Rivera, 12 years old. Ina Malaka, 9 years old. As discussed before, Rean and Roan would pose as older than they really were. Malaka was the only one who would use her real age. "Very well, you can go to the building over there," the man behind the counter on that post said, while pointing at an enormous building a few tens of meters away. "You'll find beds, food, water, and everything else there. This test will last another 2 days, so you can take your time to rest and prepare for the next part of the exam." At the same time, a disciple put Rean, Roan, Malaka, and Julio's names on the board. The board only had enough space for 100 names, though. Those who arrive after would not be put in there. For now, no one knew why that board was there. 2 days later, the first exam was over. Just as Rean expected, although the first 5,000 would pass, not even half of this number completed the marathon. In total, 1,736 kids arrived at the sect entrance. Of course, some arrived in the last hours, so they were ultimately not in the condition to continue. That being said, the sect gave the kids another 2 days to rest before going over the next test. During those 2 days, all the adults who came with those kids arrived in the sect, including Alanda. When he was passing by the sect entrance, he couldn't help show a smile on his face when he saw the board. However, he wasn't surprised. He knows very well what Rean and Roan were capable of, so seeing them in the top 100 was well within his expectations. In fact, he believed that if the twins were alone, their position would have been much higher. But you two would never leave Malaka behind, that's for sure. He didn't take long to find Rean's group. "How was it?" Roan nodded. "It was simply an endurance test, nothing to worry about. They gave the last kids to arrive 2 days to rest, so we are waiting now. As for what the next test is, I have no idea." Alanda was satisfied with that. That's good enough. The Dalamu sect won't accept anyone below the yellow color talent, so you will most likely be doing the aptitude and elements affinity test next. Rean and Roan agreed with Alanda. This endurance test was most likely made to screen out all those who didn't have the willpower, or those who only cultivated their entire lives without putting any effort into training the body. Alanda then commented, "I heard from the other guys that the elder this time around was someone who values effort over talent. Otherwise, a bunch of those pampered kids would be participating in the next test with you. From what I saw back in the city, most wealthy people had to take their kids back. Some were even cursing their luck to bump into this elder Julian tests. Every time he is presiding it, the majority of the wealthy kids fail. On the other hand, those not so wealthy or even poor have a much higher chance of passing. After all, they probably had to work a lot as kids as well, just like you and Malaka, helping their families, tribes, etc. So they were used to putting the effort and had stronger willpower and natural bodies." Roan nodded once more. "I was already expecting it. Anyway, you should make use of your time, Alanda. The spiritual energy in this mountain is several times higher than back in the tribe. Even if you can only stay a few days, you should take this chance to cultivate." Alanda agreed with Roan. I know. I was already planning to do it anyway. Sometime later, Julio came to pay a visit to their group together with his uncle. Uncle Win then stepped forward and bowed to Rean and Roan. Thank you for helping Julio getting a good position. Rean smiled, not minding it too much. He helped us back in the city, so it was only proper that we helped him back. Uncle Win laughed, and their group talked for a few minutes before Uncle Win and Julio left. They, too, know that they should not waste much time and prepare. Time passed, and 2 days went by in a flash. Suddenly, everyone heard the same elder's voice in the building. Gather in the testing field. Follow the outer sect disciples if you don't know where it is. You all have 1 hour. The second test was about to start. Julian gave everyone 1 hour, but the field was already full in less than 30 minutes. No one wanted to leave a bad impression by arriving late. One could see around 20 aptitude orbs at the very front, and right behind, there were another 20 affinity orbs. However, before those orbs, there were tables with several cups on them. Also, a big jar with a strange liquid could be seen. Alanda, any idea what is that liquid about? Alanda shook his head. This is also his first time in a place like this, so he is clueless as to what that liquid is used for. However, Julio's uncle was different. He also came out stayed beside Rean's group since Julio was friends with them. That is the age measurement liquid. It is made with the stratum of the grave herb and a few other materials. Depending on the amount you add to the mixture, you'll be able to tell whether someone has surpassed a certain age or not. That is to prevent anyone above 13 years old from joining the Dalamus sect. Rean's group was quite surprised to hear that. And how does that work? It's quite simple. If you are above the age limit, you will fall on the ground in pain. If not, you won't feel anything. This is also a good lesson for those who try to fake their ages. Well, anyway, as long as you are not above 13, you will be fine. Rean and Roan nodded. Their bodies are really of a 9-year-old boy, so there was nothing to be afraid. Soon, Julian appeared at the stage to speak. Together with him, it was possible to see several other elders who came to watch. Congratulations to the 1736 kids who passed the first exam. To be honest, it was more than I expected, so I'm glad to see that so many kids nowadays are putting real effort into their training. The tests now are quite simple. First, no one above 13 can participate, so we will test your ages first. Second, the sect doesn't accept anyone below the yellow color aptitude. Last but not least, the affinity test has to lit up no less than 3 affinity small orbs. Someone couldn't help but ask, is there any meaning in the 101st kids on the board outside? Everyone nodded after hearing that. They were all curious as to what that was about. You will now, after the practical test, start. For now, just focus on passing this second test. Without any other choice, everyone made 20 cues behind the tables with the age measurement liquid. Alanda went back and joined the other adults, while Rean's group was in the middle of the leftmost line. The outer sect disciples then came forward and started to fill up the cups on the table. One kid after another began to drink them and move forward to the aptitude test. As they arrived there, no one helped them to take their blood. They had to do that themselves using any method they wished. In fact, this particular arrangement was made by Julian every time he organized the exam. It was just a drop of blood, but kids would usually be afraid of getting hurt. Although all the kids would still be tested regardless, it was one more way to check if they had the heart for it or not. Soon, the aptitude orbs began to shine with yellow colors. Sure enough, the majority had yellow aptitude. However, it didn't take long for green colors to appear as well. It could be seen that at every 20 or so yellow aptitudes, there was at least one green in the middle. Suddenly, a kid began to scream on the ground beside the table with the age measurement liquid. The outer sect disciples quickly took the kid away and didn't look surprised at all. Obviously, that was a youngster who surpassed 13 years old of age. But it was then that Rean and Roan noticed a quite tall boy stepping forward. He was at least 170 m, and no one would believe if he said that he was under 14. However, after drinking the liquid, nothing happened to him at all. Obviously, that attracted quite a few eyes. Such a tall boy. He should be almost 14 already. However, just as he was about to cut his finger, Julian asked him from the top of the stage, "The boy over there, what's your name and age?" The boy was frightened for a second, but he quickly recovered before bowing to Elder Julian. Me Mizengala, 11 years old. Gasps could be heard all around. Only 11 years old? Were his parents? Giants' descendants? Such a tall kid, impressive. Julian nodded. All right, you can continue. He then returned his attention to all the other kids. Mizzen took a deep breath and held a small knife that he kept on his waist. With a quick slash, a short cut soon appeared on his finger. A drop of blood then fell on the aptitude orb, which soon lit up with a blue color. Oh, the first blue aptitude has appeared already. I wonder how many there will be this year. Hard to say. They're too rare. I would say 6 to 8, most likely. Julian was pleased with the tall kid. He cut himself without hesitation and even had a blue color aptitude. It turned out that Mizzen lit up 6 small earth element affinity orbs. This was proof that his body was made for close combat. If he passes the practical test, send him to my iron faction in the outer sect. Yes, Elder Julian. Usually, the elder presiding over the exam would have the first pick. So the other elders around Julian didn't say anything. Julian is an inner sect elder, but no new disciple could start in the inner sect regardless of their aptitude. They would still have to make their way up. So the several inner sect elders had their own factions within the outer sect as well. The tests continued, and after some time, another 2 blue aptitude cultivators appeared. This time, the inner sect elders fought between themselves to see who would take them in. Julian and 1 more elder stayed out, without saying anything. In Julian's case, he knew which position those kids finished the marathon test, so he wasn't very interested in them, especially after seeing their expensive clothes. Another 2 brats from some whatever clan. You can have as much as you want of them. Soon, it was Julio's time. Well, I'm going first. Rean and Ro nodded. Malaka and themselves will be the next ones. After testing his age, Julio's orb showed a green color aptitude, which was already very good. As for affinity, it was air-type just like Alanda. Julio was able to lit up 5 small affinity orbs as well. All in all, his test was pretty decent. Finally, it was Malaka's time. Yay, now I will show you what I can do. Ha! Roan, who was just behind Malaka, kicked her but forward. Stop wasting my time and go. Malaka obviously got angry, but Roan was really her nemesis. She wasn't brave enough to rebuke him, else he will give his punishment during their fighting lessons. Malaka could only walk forward helplessly while rubbing her butt and sulking. Rean and Alanda couldn't help but laugh out loud, seeing that. She obviously had no problem with the age test, so she quickly went to the aptitude orb. Malaka also didn't have anything to make a cut, so she simply bit her finger's tip. What could a small cut on her finger amount to someone who received Roan's ultra-death hell-style Spartan fighting lessons? Naturally, she had no problems with it. Still, she was shocked when she saw her blue color appearing. After all, she had always thought that she was a green color level aptitude. Rean, Roan, look, I have really become stronger. Rean and Alanda once again burst out in laughter, while even Roan couldn't help but chuckle. Her eyes brightened, and her happy face while thinking that her aptitude really increased was really amusing. Even the other adults around couldn't help but feel attracted to her contagious smile. Sure enough, she was the son of their group. All right, it is good that it increased. Now go ahead and test your affinity. Malaka nodded excitedly and went for the affinity test. As for the elders, their eyes immediately lit up. Even Julian was somewhat interested in Malaka since she made it to the top 100 board. She also didn't seem to mind cutting herself to take a drop of blood, which was very good. While Malaka controlled her water element, Rean and Roan noticed something different. Didn't her water element affinity barely lit up the 7th small affinity orb? How come it is fully lit now? It was then that Sister Orb answered. Isn't that obvious? After spending so much time with Roan, who is the epitome of Een, how could the Een energy in her body not improve? Naturally, her affinity for Een elements like water would rise after all those years. Rean and Roan's mouths twitched. Obvious? What obvious? Obvious your head. Couldn't you say that before? Finally, Malaka's 8th small affinity orb lit up, which was also her limit. This time, The crust of ice around the affinity orb was several times bigger than back then when she did her affinity test for the first time. However, she was already a middle-stage energy-gathering realm cultivator, so she could free herself without others' help. Once again, Malaka began to jump while waving at Rean and Roan on the back. She was really excited to see everything getting better than she was told. The twins just sighed in the end. Since it was done, then so be it. On the stage, the several elders were verbally fighting even more fiercely to see who would take her. It was then that they heard a sweet voice rising from behind. I hope the elders will leave this little girl to me. Although she doesn't have a red color aptitude, her elemental affinity is almost on par with one. My Blue Orchid faction is definitely the best place for someone so connected with a water element like her. Her name was Zaya Shinsuo, an intersect elder, just like Julian. But she had a unique trait that no other elder had. She rarely recruited disciples to her faction, and they were all women. Also, due to the size of her faction, she never fought for resources with the others. It was not that she wasn't confident, it was just that with her numbers, what she already get is more than enough for everyone inside. Perhaps that was the reason no one ever bothered much with her. Since Elder Zaya is interested in that little lass, I have nothing else to say. The other elder also nodded. As long as her Blue Orchid faction kept as it is, they are satisfied with it. Other than recruiting blue color talents, the elders would pick their green color talents as well. Some would even take a few yellow that somehow interested them. Julian was an excellent example of such an elder. But Zaya only took 3 girls so far, with Malaka being the third and probably the last. Then this Zaya will thank all the elders in advance. She sat on her chair once more and began to leisurely watch the exam continue. Finally, with Malaka leaving the test, it was time for Roan to come forward. As Roan moved forward to test his age, he communicated with Rean through their soul connection. Last time, we held each other back, so we didn't get to see our real affinity level. But this time, I think we should hold back on purpose. Rean nodded. Sister Orb, is there a way to change the color that appears in the aptitude and affinity tests? I have no idea how the aptitude orb works, so I don't think I can help with that. As for the affinity test, it would be useless. Even if it shows another element now, you will use your real elements once you start a practice. Sure, you can also use other elements, but they won't be even half as good. In the end, the fact that you try to hide them would be even more suspicious than showing them now. Rean then told Roan, have you noticed that the elemental affinity orb has 12 small orbs around it? Yuri told me that one we used back in the tribe was of a lower quality, so it couldn't test higher affinity levels. Well, considering the average level of kids in a place like our Varen tribe, there wasn't really a need to get one with 12 small orbs. That's why it only had 9 back then. But I feel that if we don't hold each other back, we most likely will lit up all 12. Sister Orb snorted. You think? I can guarantee, if you do it right, the element affinity orb might even break since it won't be able to hold against your level. Roan thought the same. Let's do like Malaka and lit up 8 small affinity orbs. We won't be able to hide our aptitude and element, but they don't need to know how strong our affinity level is. Rean agreed with Roan. Let's follow your idea then. Besides, there is no such thing as white and dark colors in the aptitude tests. In that case, they won't be able to tell if it is good or not. At most, we will be considered irregulars. Although they talked a lot, they used their connection to do that. So it only took a few seconds. Roan quickly finished drinking the age measurement liquid and moved to aptitude orb. Sure enough, as soon as his blood touched the aptitude orb, a dark light came out of it. When the elders saw that, they all got up of their chairs. What is that? Was there such thing as black color aptitude? I've never heard about it, that's for sure. Is it good or bad? It should be bad, right? After all, the lowest one is gray. In theory, black should be even lower than that. Are you blind? He is already in the Foundation establishment. Have you ever seen a kid with gray aptitude at this realm? Who would be idiot enough to spend resources on him if it was bad? Get his information and see for where he came from. If he is from some wealthy family, his parent might like him so much that they push this kid into that level by using cultivation resources. One of the outer sect disciples came running and delivered the papers containing Roan's information. Varen tribe, south of Estreg City. I don't even know where it is. An elder had a pensive expression until suddenly his eyes lit up. I remember now. I passed by this city once. Basically, the elder then explained what kind of place Estreg City was. That poor? There is no way anyone could push someone with an aptitude worse than gray into the Foundation establishment. Which means, the other elders nodded. Black aptitude might not be a bad aptitude. But in that case, how good is it? He arrived at such a level in such a terrible environment. Could it be that his aptitude is comparable to a blue color, or maybe red? Let's see his elemental affinity first. If it turns out that it is bad, then there is nothing else to discuss. Everyone nodded their heads. However, since Rean's time was right after Roan, his aptitude test came before Roan could test his affinity. White color aptitude. Aren't those kids just a copy of each other? It's just that they have different hair colors. Twins? Each one with the opposite aptitude color. What does that mean? Soon, they found out that Rean and Roan were really brothers from the same Estreg City region. Finally, Roan arrived in front of the affinity orb and pressed his hand over it. Immediately after, the transparent affinity orb became dark. Dark, element, quiet, wait for him to finish. The small orbs around the main one then start to lit up one after another. Finally, the eighth one lit up a little and stopped there. Roan looked at that and sighed inwardly. So easy. Still, the elders were also surprised. Dark element with 8 small affinity orbs is close to the affinity level of a red color aptitude. But have anyone ever seen a user of dark element before? Once again, everyone shook their heads. It seems like we'll need to check how good he will fare during the practical exam. After all, a cultivator that only relies on his cultivation and can't use his elements is useless. Huyen narrowed his eyes before saying, if they are twins, does that mean that the white-haired boy has the light element? The other elders had to admit that it made sense. The dark-haired boy had a black color aptitude and dark element. As for the white-haired one, he showed the white color aptitude, so they could already imagine him showing a light element. Sure enough, the affinity main orb shined with white light. Right after, just like Roan, 8 small affinity orbs lit up around the main one. They turned out to be identical and pole opposites at the same time. Nevertheless, those elders had never seen anything like that before. Seems like we can only rely on the practical exam to test those two. But suddenly, someone appeared right in front of all the elders on the same stage. It was so sudden that the elders who were close jumped back in fright. The one who appeared was a female cultivator. She looked to in her mid-20s, straight brown hair, and used an exquisite blue robe. Her presence seemed to overshadow all the elders around. The intersect elders were taken aback when that woman appeared, though. But they quickly came back to themselves and bowed at the same time, paying respects to sect leader. Mia Orzut joined the Dalamu sect precisely 228 years ago, one of very few red color aptitude cultivators of the entire Jalan country. She was 9 when she passed the test and a Foundation establishment cultivator already. At the age of 15, she entered the core formation realm. At the age of 31, she broke through the core and soul fusion realm bottleneck. When she completed 57 years of age, she entered the nascent soul realm. Finally, at the age of 138, she became one of the youngest soul transformation realm cultivators of the country. She has been in this realm ever since. She became the sect leader 53 years ago at the age of 184. Under her leadership, the sect prospered. Today, one of the reasons for the sect to have such a stable position in the country was also because of her. Rumors say that she is already in the peak of the soul transformation realm, but no one knows for sure. Still, no one doubts that she will eventually enter the saint realm. After all, she has an enormous lifespan ahead of her. Foundation establishment realm has around 150 years of lifespan. Core formation goes up to 200. Core and soul fusion gains another 100, dying around 300. 500 is the limit for a nascent soul, while the soul transformation gives an unbelievable 1,000 years of life. Mia still has 763 years ahead of her, so only an idiot would doubt her chances of entering the next realm. As long as she doesn't die, of course. She looked behind before asking, "Who are those twins?" Huyen, as the organizing elder this time around, immediately stepped forward, reporting to sect leader. "They are Rean and Roan Larks. They came." Huyen then gave a full explanation, including everything he knew about them. Such a remote place gave birth to those two. Huyen was taken aback by those words. Could it be that sect leader knows something about the dark and light aptitude and elements? Mia narrowed her eyes. If one were to ask if she has ever seen one, the answer would be a resounding no. However, it is not like she has never heard about something similar. I haven't heard about those light and dark aptitudes and elements specifically. However, I did hear that different types of aptitude and element affinities do really exist. In our Sasimo Empire, there's a man called Harko Estintel, who supposedly has a bronze color aptitude and elemental affinity. It seems like it has something to do with controlling all metal elements, somewhat similar to Earth element. On the south of our continent, the part controlled by the Flaxen Empire, there's also a woman rumored to have a cyan color and elemental affinity. However, the Flaxen Empire is too far away, so I don't know what type of elemental affinity the cyan color represents. She looked at Rean and Roan as they went to meet Malaka and Julio. As for all the eyes on them, they simply didn't care. And now, a dark and light aptitude colors appeared. Julian couldn't help but ask the question that all elders had in mind. Does it mean it is a good thing? Mia sighed before shaking her head. Hard to say. It will mainly depend on those two. As for why is that, you don't need to think much to understand, right? Julian only had to think for a moment to understand what the sect leader meant. I see. Those are aptitude and elemental affinities that no one saw before. Naturally, there's no such thing as cultivation techniques or skills that they can learn from us. Whatever they do in the future, they will need to think about them from scratch. The old saying is really right. A cultivator that can't use his primary element is simply useless. Mia Orzut nodded. To be honest, I believe that many more weird aptitude colors and elemental affinities appeared in the past. However, because of those limitations on techniques and skills, the biggest majority all failed to achieve anything. Of course, this is just a conjecture of mine. I might be wrong about it. In the end, it will all depend on their own effort. The other elders' eyes dimmed after hearing that. It would be too hard to guide those twins. Not to mention that the final results would most likely be terrible. In the end, no one wanted to do anything with them. However, there was a single exception. Effort, that's the word I love the most. Elder Julian's eyes lit up as he looked at the other elders. If none of you has any interest in the twins, I'll be taking them. Is there anyone against it? All the other elders shook their heads. Since Julian wants them, that's his problem. As Rean and Roan chatted with Malaka and Julio, Mia looked to the sky. She then sent a divine sense message to a certain old man hidden somewhere. Master, the yin and yang balance of our sect seems somehow different. Immediately after, Mia received an answer. So you notice as well? It started yesterday when the new kids arrived. However, the changes are way too small for us to say whether it is good or bad. Mia nodded. A light and dark aptitude and elemental affinity kids, and this sudden change. It doesn't matter how I see it, they are definitely related. What should we do? Leave them. The only ones who can perceive this change are the two of us. And that is only because of our connection with this mountain, so there is no risk of others noticing it. If we were anywhere else, we wouldn't be able to notice anything. If it turns out that it is a bad thing, it won't be too late to drive those twins away. Perhaps they would have their own uses even if that's the case. Mia nodded once more. Very well. She then looked at Julian and commanded. Just continue the exam as normal. As rare as those twins might be, no one would really care about them. If it is gold, it will shine. Let them fight their way to the top like all the other kids. Elder Julian immediately accepted the order. Yes, sect leader. Mia then disappeared as if she had never been there. In fact, other than the elders, no one had noticed her presence at all, with a single exception. What a scary woman. Sister Orb, did you say something? Me? Ah, no, I didn't say anything. Rean thought that answer to be a little strange, but he decided to ignore it. The exam continued. In the end, a total of 7 blue-color aptitude kids appeared. Obviously, all the elders had already made their own selection. They were basically just waiting for the second test to be over. However, just as the last kids were passing through the aptitude test, an orb suddenly lit up with a bright red color. All the eyes were caught by that image. The boy seemed to be around 12 to 13 years old. He also wore an expensive robe and had an air of arrogance. Still, none of the elders cared about that. They only paid attention to the red color in his aptitude orb. When he went to the affinity orb, it once again brightened with red color. However, this time it represented his affinity with the fire element. The temperature around that kid the sword and the other kids couldn't even get close. As for the small orb around the main one, 9 of them lit up almost instantly. Even the 10th orb also brightened a little bit. Red color. 10 small affinity orbs. It's been over 10 years since a genius like him appeared. But at the same time that the elders' eyes lit up, they dimmed almost instantly. That's because they knew that this kind of talent would not be for them to take. Sure enough, 5 figures appeared on the stage almost instantly. They were the core elders, experts at the nascent soul realm. What's his name? An outer sect disciple quickly went back to gather the information. His name is Aegis Kexidor, from the Kexidor clan. It is a famous clan of cultivators with quite a few branches in our country. It seems like he is the great-grandnephew of Cultivation Kexidor. One of the elders remembered his name and nodded. Ah, so he is from that man's family. Cultivation Kexidor was part of our sect in the past, but he left to create his own clan later. Cultivation Kexidor is a core and soul fusion cultivator and on friendly terms with our sect. The core elders were satisfied with that answer. No wonder this kid was sent in here. Immediately, one of them stepped forward. What about you leave that kid for me? I wasn't here the last 2 times a red color aptitude appeared. However, the others immediately snorted. Oomph. Aren't you being too greedy, Runka? The reason you didn't appear was that you left for the Empire's capital. As far as I know, you got quite a few nice things there. The who said that was a core elder called Juvian Tartio. It was then that a woman stepped forward. I think he should come to my side. He has the fire element affinity, just like me. I'm best suited to guide him. Her name was Tyria Insan, one of the 2 female core elders present. Tyria, that is not everything. Fire element might not be my primary one, but I don't lack cultivation techniques and skills for someone like him. This time, the one who talked was Cassie Galaraz, the 2nd female core elder. Oomph. Seems like it won't go anywhere like this. In that case, what about we make a bet? The other 4 core elders looked at the one who spoke. His name was Ryfon Kalin, the oldest core elder in their group. What kind of bet? Ryfon smiled before saying, let's bet about how many points his group can make during the last test. What about it? The elder who guesses the number correctly or gets the closest shall take Aegis to his or her side. What about it? The other core elders narrowed their eyes. It will be hard to guess. After all, it will depend on Aegis's group strength as a whole, not on his own alone, especially on his leadership. Isn't that good? That way, none of us will have the advantage. However, let us wait for to make our guesses after he finishes creating his group. All the core elders nodded. Hulian didn't intervene and simply waited for the aptitude and elemental affinity tests to be over. Others might have gotten fascinated with that red color aptitude, but Hulian didn't give a damn. He particularly disliked those descendants of great clans who had everything on their hands since they were born. Of the 1736 kids, only 1587 passed the exam. Those 149 that failed were above 13 years old or had an aptitude/elemental affinity below the acceptable mark. Hulian then took the opportunity that all the kids were already gathered to announce. The last test will start tomorrow morning. It is a practical exam to test your abilities as cultivators and as a group. The group must have at least 5 participants and at most 10. If you all remember, there is a board at the entrance of the sect showing the first 100 kids to finish the marathon test. Those who are on the board will have priority on the group selection. All the other kids outside of the top 100 will have to wait until the ranked ones finish building their groups. Of course, those ranked in the top 100 can recruit the kids in the top 100 as well. Now, the content of the practical exam is very simple. You will be sent into the sect's private demon beast forest, which is filled with tens of thousands of stage 1 and 2 demon beasts. There's also a few stage 3 deep inside, so you better be careful where you are walking to. Your group's objective is to gather 1,000 points. As long as you complete this task, your group will be accepted into the Dalamus sect. However, keep in mind that this test will be observed by the sect elders. If we catch some kid purposely not helping their group, we will eliminate that kid immediately. Our sect doesn't need parasites, it needs strong cultivators. As for the group composition, it must not have more than 2 foundation establishment cultivators. This is to prevent a team made out only of foundation establishment kids. Pay attention to how many points the demon beast will give you. Each stage 1 demon beast gives your group 1 point. Stage 2 gives your group 10 points. If you can kill a stage 3 demon beast by some miracle, it will provide you with 1,000 points. Now, the ranking. The top 10 groups with the highest scores will receive a reward of 1,000 rank 2 spirit stones to share between their members. Also, the first place will get double the reward, 2,000. Rean and Roan's eyes lit up. Only now did this test become interesting for them. Elder Julian then continued his explanation. We will leave at the end of the afternoon, so use this extra time to mount your team. The test itself will start in the next day morning. If you need help setting up a group or are left out, seek one of the outer sect disciples for help. They will assist you with those and other problems that might appear. The top 100 kids, you now have 1 hour to build your group. After this 1 hour passes, the rest of the kids are free to start building their groups as well. Elder Julian then retreated to his chairs and began to observe the kids with the other intersect elders. As for the core elders, their eyes were glued at Aegis Kexidor, waiting to see who he would recruit into his group. On Rean's group side, Rean couldn't help but comment. I pretty much like this test. It is very straightforward. But what do we do for the reward? Should we aim for 1,000 or 2,000 spirit stones? Roan pondered a bit before saying, we already got quite some attention with our aptitudes and elemental affinities. Besides, they all know that we are foundation establishment cultivators. So there wouldn't be anything strange if we got first place. Don't forget that each team can't have more than 2 foundation establishment kids, so it's perfect for us. Rean laughed after hearing that. Very well, let's see if we can get first place then. Well, in the worst case scenario, I doubt we won't make it into the top 10, which is already worth it. Roan nodded. That was what he was thinking exactly. The two of them looked at Julio after that. Since you are already here, want to come with the 3 of us? You are in the energy gathering realm advanced stage, so you will be of great help. Julio smiled before nodding. As for Malaka, she was already a guaranteed member anyway. Now, what should we do for the last member? Julio got confused after hearing that. Last member? Aren't you going to recruit 10 members? Rean and Roan shook their heads. There is no need. Julio was quite surprised by the two's confidence. It was then that Malaka spoke. Rean, Roan, can I chose the last one? The twins looked at each other and pondered a bit. Oh well, it is not like we know the other kids anyway, so let's leave it to luck. All right, Malaka, go ahead and chose anyone. Roan didn't have much to complain about, either. Malaka's eyes brightened, but just as she was about to look for someone in the middle of the kids, someone called her over. Wait, Rean, Roan, and Julio, who were just behind her, also looked at who called her. Isn't this that kid with a red color aptitude? However, he completely ignored them and went to talk directly with Malaka. Hey, little girl, don't you want to join my group? As long as you are with me, you will get the first place in this next test. After all, I have a red color aptitude. I'm also gathering the other blue colors. How about that? Rean and Roan's expressions went dark. They must have a death wish or Roan wish to dare hit on their little sister.